do you say let's head down to the halfway? Work was hard, let's play some cards on the boulevard. Better get your ass in gear, or many a drunk uncle you will fear. Ooh. And now the times keep a changing. The street does not own me till you don't.
Yay, yay! What's up, Jive Turkeys? Welcome to another episode of Story Time with Boots. Got a fantastic episode today. I say that every week, but this is something that's been long overdue. We've tried to schedule, and the day has finally come. I got my two pals here, two of the biggest names in internet politics today. We got Money Shop Mike Barkley.
Hello.
There he is. We got erotic Eric Hennig.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're going to dive into politics. So it's definitely a hot button topic that a lot of people have lost family, friendships, really just drives people crazy. And it just seems like something that people cannot have a civil conversation about. I don't understand it for the life of me. I don't understand why people can't explain their point of view and their differences and why they think the way they think and have a conversation and just leave that conversation either lightened or seeing someone's perspective and just, having that as opposed to it getting violent or nasty or anything like that. That's what we're going to try to do here today. Well, not try. We are going to do that today. Hopefully it gives everybody listening some perspective as to where we're coming from and everything that we think is wrong, with politics today. Before we get started, be sure to check out social media, which is Storytime with Boots. That is Facebook and Instagram. Twitter is Storytime W Boots. So, gentlemen, welcome. It's been long overdue.
Good afternoon,
gentlemen. What's up, fellas?
Eric, how are you? Eric squared.
Yes,
Yeah.
man.
Yes,
Two E's. You're double teamed today.
I am double teamed.
Are you guys feeling fully aroused and ready to get this going?
Like that one time in
man.
Vegas.
Yeah.
Both
right.
guys were named Eric too.
Holy shit. I feel like I might be hurting later. Okay, so whoever wins, we're going to settle this with a rousing game of swords at the end to figure out who the real winner is. We got 5 topics or so that we'll get into. The first thing I wanted to do was let everyone just kind of give their opening perspective as to what air quote side that they represent. More or less, not what side they represent, but I guess their perspective as to
Their beliefs politically. Or...
their beliefs, why they feel the way they do, why they lean towards a side or back a particular candidate or whatever the case may be. So that's how we'll open it up. Then we'll get into Trump. Obviously, that's the biggest thing in politics that's probably in the media, whether it's TV, whether it's social media. So you got to talk about that. The misinformation in politics. We'll touch on how social media affects people, just politics in general, since this is fairly new to the political world as well as everybody else. And lastly, I think we'll round everything out with change. So what can be changed in politics? Where do we think where we're headed, and what can really be done to make things a lot better than they are now, which is really just kind of a shit show.
Right. If we can figure that out, we should be hired.
Yeah,
by the White House.
But, not to get into that, but I think one of the things that is going to be a leader into something positive is things like this, long format conversation where people can come together, and discuss their points of view.
Like Eric and I touched on, like over Twitter, you get into these little quips, in 140 characters, and then you're trying to get your point across, but it doesn't really connect like a conversation can.
No, because you have people who are maybe they're just doing it to troll. You have people there who are just triggered, and a lot of people just say, like, Twitter is used as a platform to be nasty.
Right.
To get out, and whether we know that subconsciously or not, a lot of people are just using that because it's so short-charactered, and you could just have these little mini arguments and
right.
be done.
Well, I think a lot of Twitter or social media in general is all emotion. Not
Absolutely.
based on factual conversations and that kind of goes into, obviously, you're defending on, what side you believe in or what your political beliefs are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So real fast, you just had that intro, and how do you guys feel the country's doing today as far as what's going on with the country, like where it's at? You said it's a shit show, which, of course it is as far as on an emotional level. But the country itself, as far as numbers,
I believe,
like economically,
just economically.
In any way, like I think we're as divided as we've been since the Civil War.
Agree.
And economically, I think we're in a good place. We've been in a good place ever since the '08 crash. We've steadily been on an incline,
Sure.
which is great. Mm-hmm. So the economy, we're in a better spot there. Politically divided,
yes, there's no doubt about that.
Social media and even conversation, I feel waves of violence.
And it's scary.
Taking up Mm-hmm.
I go back and forth with that because I think, yes, you see division on social media.
I agree, yes.
But to be perfectly honest, when you're talking about topics like racism and things like that, I think we've come so far and such a long way, and we don't realize it. And where I base that judgment is when I'm talking about the everyday person. When you interact with somebody at the gas station or at work or you're at the store, 99% of the people you interact with are nice, and you're nice to them. That doesn't mean that someone can't be a closet racist, this and that. But my point is, the people you're interacting with in the present world, not in the digital world, at least for me, most of the people you deal with are nice, and they're nice to you, and I'm nice to them, and we have good interactions, and I feel, from that standpoint, when people go into the digital world is when they get nasty.
I agree 100%.
And I think that's what kind of might sway some people's perception.
Right.
Because they can be behind closed doors, and they can, if they see something that triggers them.
Right. I agree with you, but also it's tough, from our perspective, that may be how it seems, but we're not a black guy. We're not a black girl. We're not an
right. We can't give it from that perspective.
So we can't. Yeah, we can only know what we feel, and I agree with you. That's how I feel. As far as most people are nice, but it's a tough question to answer. It's and that's pretty much to get into your opening question. That's kind of, I wouldn't say a side because I don't want to be on any side. I think it's toxic if you're just all on one side.
Right.
It's a horrible position. If you can't see, there's truths both sides.
Right.
You're just playing a game.
You're
on a team, which isn't, that doesn't help anybody. But obviously I lean left, just because what I see on the right is just something I don't connect with personally. As far as who I am, some of the bully tactics that, can also be done on the other side. But I just kind of feel my personality and, I don't mess with gays, all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
That's just who I am. Don't bully people. Just kind of let people do what they do.
I think the majority of people feel that way too.
I think the majority of people are right in the middle anyway.
Yeah.
I think naturally we're all liberal, and then until something
socially liberal, absolutely.
Socially liberal, yeah. But I think especially today, nowadays, the conversation's gotten so toxic that if people see on the liberal end somebody taking advantage of it, that really pisses off the guy on the other end. So there's a lot of pissed off type of conversation where people think they're getting got.
I think people feel like the pendulum has swung in such a crazy direction. And I'll give you an example.
Now, why do you think that?
Well, I'll give you I think some people do. For instance, when you're talking about people who are transgender, or man wants to become a woman and then compete in high-level athletics as a woman when they were once a man.
Right.
And here's where I'm going to get into my perspective in a second, but here's where I think is what kind of triggers people, is when you have science and facts and people don't want to accept that and they just want to have social acceptance. So, for instance, when people don't want to accept the fact that men's bone structure is different, or men overall can be naturally have more testosterone and things that would make them stronger. Not saying every man is stronger than a woman. Lord knows there's tons of, but this is how people interpret things.
Right.
Oh, you know what I mean? But to that point, there was, I think it was collegiate wrestling. A man had become a woman and wanted to compete against women, and a lot of women were pissed. Stuff like that should not be allowed. I
think any rational person sees that. I think people might think all Democrats are all liberal, all think these crazy. No, that doesn't if a man wants to become a woman, more power to her, or however you say
most people give
but
a
as
shit.
far as sports like that, no, there's bone structure, there's genetic makeup that. So no, that I would think if you asked 10 people that lean left, 9 would say, yeah, like you got to draw a line somewhere with that.
Right.
Right, but where's the line being drawn? I mean, you're getting people kicked off of social media for misgendering somebody.
Well, you got people get kicked off of social media for being nasty too, like for
Sure.
So it kind of there's these wings, like, and I feel like it's only like 5% to 10% of this wing and 10% that are actually the fanatical people.
Sure.
And then there's some that kind of like think that every little misstep or everything that like you said, like, should this man be wrestling as a girl? Like, you have to believe that and you're crazy and you're nuts. Who wants to be called crazy or nuts before you even have a conversation with somebody? So automatically you're under defensive. But I find that, like I said, how most people I think are socially liberal. People assume that you feel a certain way before you even kind of get into it.
Sure, well, everybody's identified with, certain things, but...
Right, as far as even like the gun issue or whatever, like, I would assume that most of my friends that identify on the right think it's a horrible thing and they think that should be something that we try anything to prevent, senseless
You
gun.
mean mass shootings?
Mass shootings, yeah.
Sure.
Let's do whatever we can. Like I understand, hunting or like
For food
or having protection, but to have these kind of pistols like that can just spray down a concert in Las Vegas from a balcony.
Well, we can get into that.
I think
that was arranged by our own government.
But where does mental illness fit into all this? Right?
It all fits, but they're not exclusive. It's mental illness. It's both. It's not just one or the other, which I think is the biggest problem I see with that argument. It's like it doesn't have to be just one or just other. It's all of it.
Sure.
So to say like it's not the gun, in that case, maybe, but why not? If we're going to lose one life,
I could see what you're saying. If you give someone access, if they are mentally ill, and however they get it, let's say they stole the gun as an example, how they got it. But I get what you're saying. If they don't have access to this type of weaponry that could, literally, they could walk into a synagogue or they can walk into a mosque or a church and just literally start taking people out left and right. Try to limit that if you can.
Limit if you can.
Of course.
I read a study.
I think everybody.
I not to quote me on this, but something like every man, woman, and child could have 3 guns.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
In the country.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't need one, and maybe I will. I don't own one, but I don't knock anyone who does. Like, I think maybe I would one day have one for protection or whatever.
Sure.
I'm not comfortable around that. That's just I'm not anti-Second Amendment like people would assume just because of, Mike's sprouting liberal shit again. He must no, I just think there's senseless violence that we should try anything, if it even helps save 20 people. Who knows? There's no way to definitively know if it will, because you can't, you don't know what's going to happen before it does. But.
Sure.
And I don't know if either of you know this stat or not, we'll call it, but has mass shootings and mass killings, let's just say, because even if it's not a shooting, let's say someone runs a group of people over with a car, has that increased?
Yes, absolutely. It's an American problem too.
Since the social media era? Because
no doubt.
I guess the point what I was going to ask you guys is, why do we think this is happening? If you had to think why this is increasing,
right?
What would your thoughts be?
I've read on it something about the lonely male kind of theory, men. There aren't the jobs anymore. Like when our parents were coming up, there was some type of labor or union or some type of job that you could pretty much walk into after high school that could allow you to support your children, buy a house. But now that's not as readily available to everybody, even with a college degree. Those people aren't finding jobs. So I think there's something to that, but it's a tough question because how do you get into a mind of somebody that's insane like that,
Sure.
It is tough. One thing I think that we're starting to see a trend towards is obviously suicide has increased, especially in young people and in males, in particular white males. I think a lot of it does have to do with social media today. If there's one thing I can point to that seems to be a common theme in terms of a timeline, it's been social media and I think how people are perceiving social media. Everything we see today is, I don't want to say fake, but it's made to seem a lot better than it is, whether you're talking about, women using filters and everything's trying to make their outward appearance of family life or themselves seem great.
And we had that conversation, I think, a few nights ago, how do people even fall in love anymore? Like I remember moments in my life that like they're just in my brain because like you're in the moment, you're present. Like now I took a walk the other day, I saw a couple that like hug in it, and before they could even like embrace, like she had the phone out taking a picture.
Right.
Like, are you in this world? And like
yeah,
we were
you
talking
can't
about,
enjoy that moment.
right?
You
Because
literally
you're
have
in a
to,
virtual
right.
reality. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I checked my phone just the other day about the hours it was embarrassing. Like
Yeah.
it's something that it shocked me, and I'm actually going to work on from this point forward. But all those hours you're on your phone, on Twitter, thinking you're smarter than the next guy, which I'm guilty of sometimes.
Everybody does it.
But all those hours, you're not in the real world. You're not creating any type of memory.
You're not in no community.
It sounds
no conversation,
so
no
silly to say.
relationships.
Like people are like, "Oh, weirdo," But no, your mind. It's all about the mind, and your mind is literally focused on everything that is going on
Sure.
with what you just saw on Twitter, on Facebook, and Instagram. And when you look down at your phone, and iPhone has that feature now where it tells you, holy shit!
I wish you
I've been on
I
my
wish you didn't
phone
tell me
for-
about that feature.
for 10 hours. It gives you like an average a day. It'll be like, I've been on that for 10 hours a day or whatever it is.
Right.
I've gotten mine to sit. I want to get mine to down to like try to 2 to 4, somewhere in that range. I think can be.
Right.
I used to use it as an excuse for like my music. Like
Sure.
I have to be on it because I have these gigs I want to promote.
Well, we can just make excuses for
anything.
you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah. And
But-
I realized like it was just an excuse. You don't need to be on there that long.
right. So back to what?
Yeah, I lean that way, and then I think it has to do with my overall personality. But I do see things. I try to see things honestly and fair.
Yeah.
And that's why I lean that way.
I think what you're saying too is you lean that way out of compassion for people. You want everything to be fair. And from your point of view, you gave the example of gays and lesbians, and obviously, you want to advocate that they're treated fairly and they're treated right.
Right.
So it sounds like essentially, if I could pinpoint it with one word, what you're saying is you basically just want to make sure everyone's being treated fairly.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean because I want to treat people fairly, I'm a liberal.
No.
Or I'm a Democrat.
That's not
You
what
know
I'm saying.
I mean?
No, I'm just saying because obviously any political affiliation, I would say most people, forget politics, take that out of it, would want their fellow man to be treated fairly.
Sure.
But what he's saying is from, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but why you back or lean left is because you feel that a lot of what they're advocating is equality for everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sure. Real fast on what we're talking about with society and what's wrong with it and what's driving people to do these mass shootings. Look at society as a whole, right? On television, what's the most popular TV shows? What's it all consist of? Right? FBI, shooting,
Violence.
terrorism,
Very-
nothing
yeah,
but violence,
very
violence,
true.
violence.
Or the news.
Or Call of Duty.
Or your
exactly,
local
video
your-
games,
your local
right?
news station.
Local news, right? It's all negative. Video games, negative. So there's no more family television shows. There's no more promotion of marriage, right? So what is it? I think the divorce rate's over 50%,
Is it over 50?
I think
it
it's
was.
over-
It
I
was
think it's over
right
50.
around 50%.
right? But I mean that's important. Family,
It's
friends,
the most important.
right? Love, caring. That's what's all important. But when you're on your phone, right, X amount of hours a day, when you're on social media, when you're watching television, and you're pounding your consciousness with nothing but negativity, now you're desensitizing yourself to look at these mass shootings, right? And now it's commonplace.
Major
Yeah.
dissents.
It's just
yeah.
everybody is desensitized to
Yeah.
all this negativity.
Right.
Okay, another mass shooting. Okay, let's go on about our business. Right. What's
And
next?
and it's shocking because now you
Sure it
really
is.
do. You hear about it, you're like, oh man, that's the world we live in. And that what kind of fucked up answer is that?
Well, where
Yeah.
does that say though, right?
Yeah, like this
it's
kind
scary.
Of, like no,
We're
like, those
ex-
people aren't here anymore. Those people are children. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like that's horrible.
We're accepting that, and that's been a long argument of
So where
should
do-
we
yeah.
showcase that in the media anymore?
Right.
But they have
but then
to,
again,
though.
you
But
have
they because
well,
it's nothing but views. That's all they care about.
well,
Look,
I wasn't
look,
even going to say for yeah.
Oh, no,
you're
no,
right.
Yeah, that's true. That's
but
very
I mean, like,
true.
I guess people would want to know too. That's
True.
like
That's where I lay on it too, because I understand that side of it, but at the same time, you got to report the news. And I think it's just a.
So
I
do
think
you
what's
not show
happened-
video?
I
Or
think
how
what's
do
happened
you?
with the media is a unavoidable byproduct of technology, the world flattening to where like, somebody in London or whatever, you can contact them as quick as anything now. Like, I think it's just a byproduct, and I think it's created the rise of like, conspiracy and all that, which that exists. Some of that stuff is true, but I think of it like that happens with the media is just like, it's just a byproduct of information and all putting it out, and then each, getting it out there, and it kind of makes it seem a little bit like all in cahoots together, which I don't know. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, but at times, but I don't always agree that it is. I just agree that maybe that's the news cycle that day, and it's just so pushed by everybody that it's unavoidable. Is what I'm saying. I don't know if it's like there's some hand in the sky that's orchestrating it, or if it's just a byproduct of where we are with technology and how news gets filtered.
Well, that it's a good transition. I'll lead right into
you lean center right, or
I don't really. I know it comes off that way, and this is kind of the comment I made before we even kicked this off, right? So our interaction on Twitter, it would make you think that I'm favoring the left,
right?
Or the right.
I'm sorry. Yes, the right. I apologize. Right. Which, when we're talking about not being able to really articulate yourself in the 140 characters, I will say this, right? I think that there is a lot of double standards, a lot of hypocritical situations that the left is doing to the right. So that drives me more nuts than saying that I identify with the right and I'm sticking up for what I believe in. It's not that. It's just, how can you ever move forward, right, and find common ground when it's nothing but finger pointing, right? So how can you be mad at Trump or whoever on the right when somebody that you believe in or somebody that you're rooting for is doing the same exact thing, right? And I'm not trying to make this about whataboutism and what about your guy. It's not that at all.
Yeah.
It just so happens that Trump's in office right now.
Right.
And this is the present situation.
Sure.
Right. So my whole thing is politics do have a place in your everyday life. That's obvious, right?
Now more than ever.
Now, yes. I mean, yeah. I mean, look, just as
I'm not saying they should more than ever, but I'm just saying they do more than ever.
Right.
Well, I'm talking about as far as providing for my family, right? My friends, my family, what's best for my personal life, right? So that's where politics do come into play. And now, yes, it's everything's magnified now, and it's a lot of focus is on politics. But I think people get too caught up in the bullshit, right? Staying that little bubble of whatever side they're on,
right?
Instead of, and I'm not trying to insult anybody, but leave the biases
out of it.
Right. And if you really, really do that, right, you'll find the common ground. Because in my opinion, the left, the right, they're all corrupt. They're all corrupt. And I'll get into with the whole 2016 election, right, all the reasons why people think Trump won, why I think he really won. You know what I mean? So as far as where I stand, I really don't stand. I believe in the Second Amendment, but I grew up identifying as a Democrat.
Right.
I always
So
said,
did I.
and I never really cared about politics until maybe the last
You're
7
hitting all
years.
my points.
Yeah.
Right? So, I tell myself, get off social media. Right? People get triggered left and right. I can just go about my life, like you said. You cut yourself away from social media. Go live your everyday life. You're not going to be bothered with the bullshit.
Yeah.
Because there are nice people out there.
Sure.
You're not walking by. Well, are you Democrat or Republican?
Right.
Well, fuck you if you're not this or that. You know what I mean?
I
That's not the way it's going.
I feel like
Well, that shit has to stop.
Yeah.
Number
Sure it
one,
does.
that has to stop. And this is, I'll get into why I will say I lean right. And I will say that not because I am only willing to side with Republican views, or to your point, Eric, you kind of said what I was going to say. So my family, we grew up lower middle class. My whole family can be
We all did.
Yeah,
We all
considered
did.
to the left. As I got older, I really didn't give a shit about politics. I think if most people are being honest, nobody really gave a shit about politics.
Of
In
course
high
we
school
didn't.
through college,
None of us did.
we knew very little, if we're being really honest.
From our parents.
From our
You know what I
parents.
I guess I got into it, the Bush years, like the 9/11,
he was
probably about
awful.
9/11
Bush was awful.
on, 9/11 on, and I probably leaned right then. Colin Dell was Republican, and that's all I kind of knew. Not that
I would
local
think Connell would be Democrat.
No, only a few in Delaware County. Lansdowne, Meade,
Darby,
Swarthmore, and Yeadon.
But a lot of people
Are
also
Democrat. The rest are Republican.
Yeah, I remember parents saying,
Yeah.
or when I was 18 years old, all right, look, no matter what you are, because your county or your township is Republican or Democrat, you must register as that in case you get in trouble with the law.
How's this? I was a couple months ago. I wanted to prospect again a job at the county.
Mm-hmm.
I was, from being in Collingdale, I was Republican, but I switched it over in 2014, became a registered Democrat. The guy who was my contact at the Delco Borough, or not,
Collingdale Borough?
No, Media Courthouse, whatever. I had to register Republican just so I could, and I was thinking the whole time, like, that's pretty.
He said that to me?
Mm-hmm. He's like, you got to register Republican before you can even be thought of to get this job.
Is that right?
And
what was the position, if you don't mind me asking?
It was like some weights and measurements kind of thing.
Now,
like
see, that's
county,
bullshit.
yeah.
That's
and I was
bullshit.
thinking, I'm like, huh. But at the time, I'm like, I kind of need something
You're gonna
today.
do-
But see,
yeah.
but you're right. It's bullshit, but that's politics. That's the
That's
the landscape.
Well, exactly.
That's what it is. It's,
well,
it's
that's the point we're making. There's bullshit on the left and the right.
Right.
And
That's what I'm trying to
bullshit
say.
from the
And
right.
you know what it
Yeah.
really comes down
It's
to?
both sides, no doubt.
Like what you said, it's like a chicken or the egg situation. Like you bring up, like, some of the things. So Fox News and Hannity, and when Obama, they were ruthless to him.
No doubt.
Ruthless.
No
And
doubt.
so it's almost like both sides can feel the same way. It's like, when did this start and who's wrong and who's right? And at some point to get past it or in a better situation, you just got to be like, all right, we got to start on a new slate of paper or something.
Right.
Because if
Yeah.
you take all the old grievances, like as far as like how ruthless they were to Obama and as far as Trump, I personally, I think he's a different story because he doesn't, it's almost like he doesn't want your love. Like he's antagonizing like that. So he's different in my eyes as far as, because with Bush, after 9/11, I got so behind it. I can still remember to this day being so proud when he threw that pitch at the Mets game after 9/11.
You know why?
And I
though?
was like, what? Because the country
It wasn't
was
really
just-
about politics. It was about bringing the country together.
Yeah, patriotism.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was
Sure.
So I remember being so proud, and it didn't matter that I wasn't, didn't like Bush or anything. It was just more like, whoa, could that happen now? I don't know, because I might get on Twitter 10 minutes later and say
I
like,
could tell you
all
what-
the fake and angry losers, but I've never liked those kind of people since I was a kid on. So I don't, I don't know how a lot, I feel on the right, people have mortgaged their, how beliefs and how they feel about people and how they act, because if anybody else acted like that, they'd be like, yo, who's this jerk off? Like, don't bring them around my kids. That's not how I'm teaching my kids.
Again, but that's both sides, right?
Who in the Obama never, I've never seen him on Twitter act anything like that.
And you're right, but that's the thing, right? So here we go. So we act like we know these politicians because they're political correct on a camera, right? But if you go and
I think in life too. I think Obama,
but how,
it's pretty.
okay, so how do you know that then? Let me ask you
I don't
that.
know him personally, but
Correct. That's my point. You don't know him.
But he's very the thing, and that's perception, because
But perception,
Obama,
but he's on, their lives are videotaped, even though he's not out there on Twitter like Trump. You saw what Obama was like, and I'm sure behind closed doors he wasn't.
They're videotaped. So let me ask you this, and I'm going to cut you off. And I'm not saying that he's a bad guy. I'm not. I'm just saying, and this is not sticking up for Trump either, but if you're being videoed, you're not going to act like an asshole, especially if you were a politician. I mean, that's the
Trump
whole
acts
thing.
like an asshole.
Correct.
And he's
But, Trump,
videoed.
but look at the state that we're in here, right?
Right.
Trump's Trump. Trump, egotistical.
Right.
Right. Me.
Yeah.
Right. He wasn't a politician.
Right.
That's him. That's Trump. So I kind of, even though he's an asshole, and I would never want our president to act like that.
you respect
But
him being
he is
himself.
who he is. That's
well,
who he
that's what I
was, and
think the
that's who he
biggest
is.
thing is.
You know what I mean?
And I'm not advocating for this anyway, but I think one of why people on the right still respect Trump is because all the media that has been against Trump,
Sure.
and we know that's have. I mean,
There's no doubt about it.
they definitely have. He's the most polarized president ever.
It's ratings.
Right,
It's
right.
ratings. It's something about ratings. It's all it is.
But what I think they think he respects is that he doesn't tuck his tail between his legs and he's just still himself. Now, whether that's right or wrong, obviously that's where we can say. But one thing I think that they realized is that if he tucked his tail between his legs, they would eat him alive.
There's a
He would-
difference.
he
There's
would-
a difference
he would have
between
been eaten alive.
tucking your tail between your legs
Okay.
and just having decorum and just to being able to the McCain thing, absolutely uncalled for.
Awful.
No,
Absolutely
But
awful.
then why does he get a pass? Why is it like, but I still have respect for that man because, he tells it like it is. That's bullshit.
Right, but again, look, he's the president of the United States.
Yeah.
The man's past 7 months now, I think. He should not be speaking like this, right? Whether he has or he feels he has a legitimate reason or not, right? But let's go back to the beginning of our conversation, right?
Mm.
This is all just emotional. This is all about emotion. All this is about emotion, right? Because if I ask you, how's the country doing, right? And I'm talking numbers, and I don't know
Right.
if it's going to be skewed.
I think he gets a little too much credit for that. I think
But why though?
Because one guy doesn't run the country.
It's
We all agree on that.
There's no doubt about that, right?
So it's been trending that way. Anybody could have been in office.
I totally disagree with that.
Yeah, I
totally
think
disagree with that.
I don't think
If that's the case, but if that's the case, why did Trump win the presidency?
Well, he won because the Democratic voter, like our parents or like the Union, the Democratic Party lost the white mid 40s that voter.
But why?
I think they felt forgotten.
Yeah, felt forgotten. They had less than $500 in their banking account, their savings account. They're working paycheck to paycheck. The economy was yet trending up from 2008.
Right.
It couldn't get any worse in 2008. It was trending up, right? But it was nothing but corruption. Nothing was being done. Nothing was being done for the African Americans with the first African American president, right? So that's a stigma that he had, the best president ever. He wasn't, right? He's the most well-spoken, well-rounded, charismatic
likable
individuals, right? That's just all political. That's all psychological, right? It's all acting good in front of the cameras. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I'm not saying he's a bad, awful president. I'm just saying that, yes, he brought it back from 2008, right?
Right.
But he bailed the banks out, right? That whole spectrum that happened, right? That was corrupt, right?
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing with things like bail the banks out, even the Benghazi thing. This is why with Benghazi, Hillary got murdered for that. But
and she should have.
But the thing, it was a judgment call. Was it the right call? In the end, no. We lost 4 lives, but
sure,
it wasn't a call where you couldn't see the other side. You had to make a decision there. There was validity on both sides. Did it work out? No. It ended up, and she should have, dealt with
So
some
what was her
bullshit
call
there.
that she had to make? What are you saying? Is it specific or
To save other lives?
to save American lives?
Yeah,
right?
she
They were
basically
getting-
had 4 people, right, 4 people.
Right. So there was people at a different site nearby, only about a mile away, that were told to stand down. Correct?
Right, because loss of more life.
Even though they wanted to go in, that's their job.
Right, but somebody's got to make the call. If you're going to walk in, the general has to make the call. If you're going to walk into a firing squad, somebody's got to make that decision, whether you agree with it or not. But I don't think it was a decision out of she wants people to die, which I don't believe that was that. You can feel either way about it, but you can see it. As far as the lies on, about Obama giving for all that truckloads of cash to Iran or whatever. That's not the full story. There's a story behind it. That money was never ours. We held that
it was our money. It was.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yes, it was. It was referred as an asset.
So as far as you may not, that story has gone so far off the trails that nobody would believe that that's actually what happened.
Okay.
So all I'm saying is, you could be of the belief that says, fuck them. We're America. We're not giving them money. Whatever. That's your opinion.
Sure.
But to act like you can't believe the thought process and the decision is
I
hear
what you're saying. You're saying she made a decision. It may not have been a right one, but you don't think it was in a place.
I don't think it was in the place where she wanted to hurt America.
Okay, right, but now I'm just going off of the facts that we're given, right? And I don't know all the details and specifics,
right?
But
Either
from what I remember,
way, yeah.
right, especially why the calls were made, why they weren't made. But I do know this: the people that survived, that were on the ground, were furious that they wanted to go in and do what they could to save, their
sure they're wired.
fellow Americans.
Yeah, sure,
right?
that's how they're wired that way.
Sure,
and that's who I would want in the military. People that would want to.
No doubt about it. Right.
But somebody makes it's an executive decision that there's no right answer if more people die. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, to that point, I think this kind of everything we've talked about shapes my opinion as to, I guess, why I feel the way I do. And really what it boils down to, if I can just be, brief about my whole opinion. It's basically everybody who is in power who I feel really runs this country. You know what I mean? It's your folks like George Soros and the big corporations who are working with government and controlling our media, controlling our food, that everything from the food that we eat to the drugs that we buy, everything that we see, and it's, for the greater good of themselves. I think people like George Soros, who are funding groups like Black Lives Matter, they are trying to pin the everyday American against each other and make them feel that there's more hate and more racism in the world so that we're all fighting. They can continue on doing what they're doing. I was actually going to play a clip that I think sums it up perfectly years ago from George Carlin, and it's about just that little bit, the big club.
And we're not in it.
Anybody who he was awesome. He was, considered one of the best comedians of all time. Now, this is years before social media. Sure. Anybody who hasn't heard it, definitely Google it. And he talks about the big club, and you guys aren't in it. And the majority of Americans, us fighting together, it just seems so, or fighting against each other, it just seems so stupid.
This is all my main point.
This is that's my whole point, because here's the thing. I lean right. I could go honestly either way, because there's certain issues that I lean left with and there's certain issues that I lean right. But I feel that these people in power are using the Democratic Party as their pawns to continue doing what they're doing. Like George Soros using Black Lives Matter and funding Black Lives Matter to start.
Sure, agent provocateurs.
Yep.
Right? They start discourse.
So
right? and listen, it's distraction. It's not what it is. Divide and conquer. It might sound conspiratorial, but if you just look at it from a common sense perspective, right? We are the most divided we've ever been, and we have no idea on what's going on behind closed doors. We have no idea. There's no coverage on anything. It's just all about Trump and Russia or whatever else. I'm not saying there's not a place for it.
Right.
Right. But there's a lot of shit going on that we're not being told, and we're too busy fighting with each other over bullshit.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we're not being told on purpose. We're being left out of some White House stuff.
But that's my point, right? And that's exactly my point, is that we are fed so much propaganda, right? So much mis- and disinformation, right? To serve a certain agenda. It might sound conspiratorial. I'm going to keep repeating it, but it happens. It's been happening.
I think it's really been happening since Kennedy. Kennedy was obviously a Democrat.
There's no doubt about it.
Kennedy was, supposedly trying to do away with the CIA.
Well, he has a whole speech about it.
He has the whole speech about it, and Kennedy was quote unquote, trying to do what was right, and that's allegedly why he was, he was taken out or assassinated. They didn't want to lose their power. Kennedy didn't want to be one of their puppets. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And this has been going on then. I'm against Bush. I told you that.
Me too.
I think he's part of the crew, man. I think he's part of the
establishment,
crew.
no doubt.
It's the establishment.
There's no doubt
Obama's
about it.
part of the crew. And this is my main point as to why I think Trump gets the amount of scrutiny that he does. It's because he is against the establishment. Bottom line. So one of the main points of why I think people, and it could be bullshit. Let's say it's bullshit that he isn't against the establishment.
I don't think that he is, but go ahead.
Well, I don't think he is, because I think we've never seen someone scrutinized so much in the media. Some of it brought on by himself, but they're doing that on purpose.
Sure.
You know what I mean? He doesn't side with them. And these people that are controlling like I said, the drugs that you take and these big corporations that, he's not playing nice with, want him gone. And now what we're starting to see is...
Now, I would disagree with the fact. I mean, he's bringing in the people he brings into the cabinet, and the people they're as swampy.
They're swamp. I agree.
I
totally agree.
So he's so anti-establishment.
The banking cartel.
Well, he definitely... Here's his selfishness. He definitely recently... I forget what... God, I'm drawing a blank. I go down too many rabbit holes with stuff. But one of the bills that he passed recently was really to benefit him. He has his own selfish interest in mind. That's for sure.
No doubt about it.
That was definitely obviously disappointing. So he is absolutely about himself. He does have some, like you're saying, swampy people in there.
Yeah.
For sure.
And he ran against. I mean, it's just, I think a lot of people, what upsets, it's not that, I mean, like you said, even Obama, who I believe was the best president in my lifetime, but we could disagree on that.
Can I ask you why?
I believe he did his best to bring us together. I think he was. It didn't work. I think it divided us even more. I think he was a good person. I think he was smart. his general policies, I just agreed with him. I think so. I mean,
I think
as far as relative the crash that we had at the end of Bush and the steady increase like
Sure.
that I think was amazing in and of itself. I think Trump gets a little too much credit for where the economy has gone since he's been in. Not that, I mean, it hasn't tanked, so he should get credit.
Is that but is that fair though? I mean, this is where I
As far
get
as
off board.
it would
you know
be
what I mean?
it would be fair. It would be a lot fairer to give him his points if he just if he was more receptive to more than half the country. Like he plays to his base too much.
Right, but okay, you have to separate the two though, right? He's an asshole. We're all in agreement with that. He has a big ego. We're all in agreement with that. He's selfish. We're all in agreement with that. But the numbers that are shown for what he's doing for this country, like him or dislike him, they're good numbers.
Well, the deficit is ballooned.
But the deficit's been ballooned, and I'm not defending him because I totally disagree with the deficit. I worry for my child,
Right.
being stuck with this.
Sure.
But it's been nothing but adding.
The economy is going to crash.
Right.
It's going to,
I hate.
It's definitely going to crash.
Okay, so
To Mike's point, I kind of agree that we can't take credit for everything that Trump's done in office financially, because if you are, then you're going to have to take credit for the crash. And wait a second.
which he won't.
But here's the thing.
But you can't predict
I don't,
the future, though.
I don't think that's all. It's all going to be.
I've been
his
hearing that
fault.
since 2013 that the economy's going to crash. The dollar's going to crash. I promise you.
I think it
Since
is.
Okay, right. There's a bubble. I understand that. They keep pumping. This is the problem.
Nobody
guys.
wants that to happen, by the way.
No, nobody does.
Listen. Okay, we have to separate these, in my opinion. Right. So when a president is in office, they're scrutinized. Their policies are scrutinized by numbers, right? That's what we're given, the data, the numbers. And Trump's numbers are good, right? The GDP is the highest it's ever been.
But
Stock market-
but it's not. Like, as far as the GDP, like, there's, like, how he lied about it never being over 4%. It was over 4%, like, 6 times in the quarters that Obama. But so he'll be the guy that's spreading the misinformation.
Okay.
Which is crazy.
Okay.
That comes from the top.
Okay, which is crazy. You're right.
Yeah,
And
like-
learn me, because if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Learn me. I have no issues with
and
that.
it was 4 times, but it was over 4, and he said it's the only time this has happened in the history of the country. Like, he throws that word out.
Okay, but
the
is it-
history of the country all the time, and it's like, whoa, dude, like, just go back. It happened with Bush and Reagan.
Okay, great. But is it over 4?
I don't know right now, but it has been.
It has been over 4
absolutely.
while he's in office,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
that's a good thing, right?
That's a good thing.
Okay, unemployment, is that down?
I assume, yeah. That's,
Right.
That's
So
what
that's-
I
is that a good thing?
Yeah, there's things that aren't argued. I don't think are argued with someone who leans in the left either.
Right, so if you cut out all
That's
these-
why I don't agree with every left. Like I said, like, if you can't see that there's who wants to see the economy do bad?
That's my point, right?
Yeah.
And this is what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to separate the emotions of how this person is, this man is as a person,
Science and data.
compared
It's kind of tough though, because you say
It
something
is,
like
though.
he's an asshole, but blah blah blah. But we all know that, but not really. If you say someone's an asshole, someone's a liar, and then go and praise them right after you say that little but.
I'm not praising him for. I'm not praising him as a person. I'm praising the country, which we should all want to be doing well.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. But Eric's also said, well, you got to respect this. Like, when early he said something like that, like, you got to earn respect.
And you are right. And I meant to
Well,
say that.
what I was saying was people on the right. I think, and I shouldn't speak for everybody, and I'm not speaking for everybody, but my interpretation is that a lot of people on the right, if we're just talking about character, respect the fact that he is not going to back down, because they feel like they are getting dealt a lot of bullshit, whether it's people on the right being censored on social media, or people on the right being made to feel like they're racist just because they're Republican.
That I don't like at all, and that's something, because every Republican I know, they're not racist.
Right.
Some of them are tone deaf. I back away, and you guys see me on
that's
Twitter about Trump.
You got to
I'll get on
understand how frustrating that is. For
I'll never
people.
call him a racist, because I think he's ignorant to race. I think he's insensitive. I don't think he's a racist.
Well, he's an elitist, is what he is. He's better than all of us.
Right. That's
he's
exactly it.
He's an elitist. And here's my point, right? So let's go back to 2016, if you guys don't mind, just with the whole election, right? So he's an elitist. Right? We agree on that.
Oh, well, there's no doubt about it.
Guess who Hillary Clinton's palling around with when she was a senator of New York City? She's palling around with all these elitists. That's
shit.
her, but
They-
I'm just saying that's her clique.
That's her crew.
I mean, that's
There's
who
pictures
she
of
is.
Trump and Hillary
Right.
well
They
before.
were friends.
Right,
They attended weddings,
Yeah.
together, right? So whatever show they put on in front of the camera, and it might have turned into, a hate for each other. I don't know.
Right.
But they were friends.
Yeah.
Right. They're all pals with the same people. They all go to the same parties.
Right.
They all donate to each other. Right. It's one big club, and we're not in it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's the stuff that
Right.
you had to realize. Right. So why do you think Trump won the election in 2016? I know I already kind of asked you that.
Oh,
but
I think the main thing was the shift of the working class union white vote, like our age to about 50.
okay.
Guys that were stone cold union guys, unions were all Democrat. Like at least
They're
when my
supposed to be
father,
Democrat, right?
Yeah, my father coming up.
Sure.
I remember my dad saying as a kid, I never had more overtime than when Clinton was in office. And
Yeah, I actually heard the economy was good when he was in office.
Yeah.
I remember hearing that.
Yeah,
back
union,
in the day.
that kind of stuff. So that they had that vote.
Mm-hmm.
Then
So why did they lose it?
I think they felt marginalized. I think the Democratic Party went a little bit off course as far as the marginalized people. They went their main focus got LGBTQ, which needs focus. Don't get me wrong,
Sure.
but I think they totally went a little bit too far left.
Well, yeah,
they forgot about that. That
Sure.
working class voter,
Well,
the white male.
They banked on that
And
vote being there.
And the Democratic Party concentrated on identity politics.
Right.
And LGBT, which all needs to consider, that does need to be focused on, but they went like hardcore with that, with race and stuff like that.
Sure.
And in doing that, they lost, that worker.
Right.
That
Yeah.
guy,
Because
the
it was-
Pico, they lost the Pico guy. They lost
did.
They lost the electricity,
lost the union
local
guy.
98 guy. Yeah.
So
Right.
but there had to be a little bit more than
Because Obama won those guys.
Yeah.
He won them in an
He won
election,
those guys.
and then
He-
Trump won them
he
when
won them, but Obama won off the back of one of the worst presidents that we've ever seen with Bush. Right.
Right.
Sure, but I mean the second election that was a little bit tougher.
But the
When
point
McCain-
being
Yeah, it
is-
was. No, it was. No,
that was a
no doubt.
genuine.
is
that was
they
a
flip
good
flop
win.
their swing states, so they
Right.
got the
And I'm not. And I'm sorry.
It
I
only
wasn't
matters
saying that.
4 states, by the way.
yeah.
Correct.
4 states win the presidency:
Right. Which is
Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin.
California.
Right. Well, the swing
California's
states.
always Democrat.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the swing states, obviously.
and I wasn't saying that to discredit Obama. I was saying it to the point that his slogan was change.
Right.
We need to change. I'm going to do this. I'm going to take on the establishment. Change.
You can almost
And-
swap
and-
Obama's slogan and Trump's
No doubt about it.
slogan.
And
Make
we-
America
and
great
look-
again. Change. It's
Right. It's propaganda. We
Right.
bought it. Right. Again,
it
it wasn't much change.
Make America great again. It's got a lot of other connotations, really. Like,
I think it has.
when was it great? When when the black man was in his place. Like, come on, like, what does that mean? Make America great again.
I think that was a. I think
I think it has a little bit of a racial undertone to
Really?
it. The Make America Great Again, like that's saying.
I
Like,
understand what you're saying. Like you think it was great back when slavery was
not
was around.
slavery, maybe maybe the 40s or something where the family was more intact. And
But what are you
and
basing
who
that
gets
off
bl-
of?
and
Well,
who
I
gets
think
blamed
that's
for that?
I think that's misinterpretation because
but
I
who-
think,
I don't
from my
understand why.
perspective, I interpret that as from a business standpoint and going back to America's roots.
America
when
first. What's wrong with that?
industrialization and
Yes.
America first when
Yes.
all the manufacturing plants were here
Yes.
and
Right.
you had
Yes.
the workers and
But
I think
it's a con because everything with Trump made in China. Made in- like, so
agree.
he-
You're
it's a
right.
con.
No, you're
and
absolutely
he's
right
one of the
about
biggest
that.
comment. You're
Yeah.
correct, but it was a con. I agree. Also, granted, he did bring companies back though, so I'm kind of being a hypocrite to myself here.
I think
we can
with the China, with the
we can
treaty- the
debate
treaties
whether
and
we
stuff,
want-
like, it's been pretty bad.
we can debate whether we even want manufacturing back here. The amount of pollution in China is through the roof.
Here's
but,
my thing
but
about
that's a whole
here's
other
my
topic.
thing about
We can-
progress. Like in civilization, human civilization, mankind. Each 100 years, we want to progress to something new. He's concentrating on clean coal, which doesn't exist. That's like, what is an oxymoron when two things are, I forget.
Yeah.
Two
Yeah,
things.
right.
There's
No, I'm
no
with
such
you.
thing as
I'm
clean
with you.
coal. We should be concentrating on service industry, technology, and stuff like that. But his whole thing is going back to the past just to make the older white voter feel safe, like nobody's taking theirs out. Where we should really be training and getting the next generation ready for these, Palo Alto type, or what's the place in California?
Yeah, you're right.
The .com, all that.
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Instead he's he's almost shunning that. He's almost making those people look like they're pansies. Like, oh, who wants to do it? But the Virginia, like, and sure, like, it's a shame that they've lost their job. It's absolutely horrible. But, like, that's not, if we want to progress as humans and take care of the planet and stuff like that, which people, I also think the left kind of leaned on that a little bit too much. Not that it doesn't need,
That's something I agree with the left on.
I agree with the left too, but I think it all became about, black, like LGBT climate. And I think a lot of the voters that the Democratic Party used to have was like, oh, what the hell? The planet, it's always cold in the winter and warm in the summer, and not understanding what it really means.
Yeah.
So I think they didn't do a good job of explaining that to the average, mind.
Right.
Because even to this day, people don't believe in it, and it's 100%, it's scientific knowledge.
Well, with anything,
I don't know if it necessarily is, though. And I will say this.
I will say
have
that the
not read
majority
deep
of the
into it.
scientists,
yeah.
because I've looked at it and I beat my head to death because this is what I do. I go down and I look on one side and I look on the other, and then I keep like, well, this says this and this says that, and
Right. Well, that's
I'm like,
the problem, too.
I'm
That's
confusing the shit out of myself.
Right.
But anyway, what I try to extrapolate from all that is, like you said, take emotions out. What is if there is science and data, what is the data showing?
On either side, and that's what we should focus
That's
on
what
for
everything
either side.
should be.
There should be one truth, and that was the point I made before.
That's the big problem.
Now there's multiple truths.
Correct,
It's like, well,
right.
that's what I'm
Which
like,
makes it
no.
difficult, right,
I'm like, there's
right.
one truth, and you can't have a truth, and I can't have a truth.
Correct.
There's got to be the truth, and either you're wrong or I'm wrong. Like, we don't have to vilify and kill each other for being,
Right.
But there's got to just be one truth, and that's disappeared.
Sure.
Because of the biased media, like you said, Fox is totally one way.
They're the biggest culprit, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, the media, period.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
But again, it's all for an agenda,
Yeah.
right?
My thing with agenda, and I see where you guys sit with it. Like, you guys kind of feel like there's a hand in the sky, kind of controlling it, which I think there's something to that. And I
Well,
also
basically,
think
it's simple. We think that
Yeah, and
the most powerful people
Yeah.
are controlling, obviously, the corporations. They're controlling government. We think that the president in charge, when really, in my opinion, the president is just a puppet for these people who are really running these powerful elitists, whether you want to call them Illuminati, whether you want to call them deep state.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to go that deep.
It doesn't even have
really
to go
doesn't
that deep, because then it's like
because then it gets a little
conspiracy
when you
theories.
say those.
Right, you're
there's-
losing Look,
But my whole point is to that George Carlin skit. He knew this years ago. People have known this for years, that these are the people who are controlling the company. It doesn't, or the country. It doesn't have to be that deep. They control, the big food production now. When me and Jorge were actually talking about that in a previous podcast. I think it's the Bear Group.
Yeah, Bayer, Monsanto, Bayer.
Monsanto,
right.
Bayer, they control the food that you're eating.
They don't control everything, right?
They control everything. So they
don't
have their
control
hand.
water.
Right. And let me ask you this. So who do you think should have won the Democratic nomination in 2016? Should that have been, do you think?
Should have been Bernie Sanders.
Exactly.
Right. And what happened there?
Yeah.
So how do you feel about that, leaning left, that he should have been the
I
president?
voted for Bernie, in the primary.
So
Absolutely.
he should have been the presidential. Do you think there was corruption there?
There's no.
100%.
Okay, right. So again,
Yeah.
so Donna Brazile, right, who ran the DNC.
What's her name? Oh,
Donna Brazile, the black woman.
I thought it was like Schultzman or something. The curly hair chick. I thought she was
No,
a
that's
Democrat.
Debbie Wasserman
Yes,
Schultz.
yeah, okay.
Yes,
Gotcha.
no. She was
I know who you're talking about now. Gotcha.
Donna Brazile was a chair for the DNC.
Okay.
Right. And what she said is that Hillary Clinton basically took over the DNC, made some kind of deals with whoever it was.
Sure.
So her and her campaign made all of the decisions. Mm-hmm. The money that was getting funneled into the DNC, donations, she and her campaign decided where that money went. Right. I think, and don't quote me on this, but I believe there might be an article or something written that votes were suppressed in California in the primary to favor Hillary Clinton. So again, the point is that I'm sure the three.
The point is,
we
we all kind of think that
it doesn't think it's fact.
Yeah,
that the
it's
primary was
absolutely
it was
fact.
fucking rigged.
right.
Yeah.
So
Bernie Sanders
right.
should have been the.
Yeah.
So give me a few minutes here if you guys.
Yeah.
Mind, right. So this is what I was trying to get at when I asked Mike about the 2016 election, right? On why he think that Trump won. Okay, so you have the primary being stolen,
Right.
right, from Bernie Sanders. So that's a big no-no right there, right? And then you have the whole DNC being ran by her and all that hoopla, right? But when she was Secretary of State, did you ever see the movie Clinton Cash yet?
No, but is that the grainy video with the planes and the child stuff? Or,
No,
that's a
no,
Clinton
no.
something, yeah.
Yeah, no. And again,
I did not know.
Referring it to a movie is, you could easily kind of like dismiss it.
Right.
But it's well documented, well resourced. And this is all based off of, from what I understand, public knowledge.
Okay.
Right. So long story short, while she was Secretary of State, so the Clintons left office in the 90s in debt. The whole Monica Lewinsky debacle, right, et cetera, et cetera. So they leave office in the 90s in debt. And it was reported by the AP that in 2016, the Clintons are worth $200 million, right? They don't own any companies, whatever, right? So a big jump to income like that, those questions, right?
Which happens after the presidency, like that. The Obamas are about to cash in too. I'm
Yeah,
not
Well,
saying
it's
that-
usually
right.
speeches.
Oh, it's shady. Don't get me
So-
wrong,
right,
but yeah,
Right. So again,
they don't make their money comes after the presidency.
and you're right. So
Yeah.
and correct. So they make money off his speeches, writing books,
Right.
Right. Blah 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 blah. But 140 million of that money is reported to be made while she was Secretary of State. Okay. So then this movie kind of breaks down.
She was selling stuff to the Clinton Foundation.
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah,
Right,
yeah.
which is public knowledge. So
Right.
only 10% of their donations to the Clinton Foundation actually went
to the charity.
to the charities.
Right.
And which
Okay.
is bullshit. You find that actually with a lot of charities.
And
so
correct,
just in
right.
general, be careful.
So-
but
so-
that is, I get
right.
what you're saying.
That's why they
yeah,
shut
like-
down the Trump charity because they all do it.
Because it's
Right.
bullshit,
Yeah,
right? It is, and that's why I said it,
And
it
it's
happens.
and it's the worst kind of fucked up.
It is because
It's dirty.
it's
It's
supposed
very
to be to
dirty.
help somebody.
Yeah,
Correct.
Correct.
it's-
Right. Right.
So
It's
that's
a shame that you want to, you want to do good and contribute to
Yeah.
a charity, but you're
Yeah.
worried on. I'll be honest. If I forget where it was, Wawa or maybe Pretzel Boys or something like that. Hey, do you want to donate to this? And I ask, well, how much is this is going towards the actual charity?
love that you
I
do
don't-
that.
You're such
I
a
love
dad
that.
now.
I would love to be
Exactly.
behind.
I don't know if that's insulting or not.
I would
but-
love to be behind you in line when that happens.
Right. And
Because I think the same thing.
I
I'm like,
sincerely do. I mean, I don't.
swear
It
to
might have
God.
been inappropriate. I don't
No,
know.
it's not. It's not.
But anyway, so back to Clinton while she's Secretary of State. So, long story short, between the Clinton Foundation and CGI, the Clinton Global Initiative, right? What that was an organization that would bring the private sector with foreign governments and the Clintons acting as the middlemen or the mediators to do human rights, environmental, or that's what this all is supposed to be made for, right? So what was going on is that they're making deals with these foreign governments, warlords, nasty dictators, okay, in Africa, Sudan, I forget where else it was. So what they would do is it was pay to play, right? So hey, what they were basically doing was getting their rich friends deals with these foreign governments, and in return, months later, Bill Clinton's doing a speech for $500,000, $1 million. The Clinton Foundation's getting $100 million funneled into her foundation, right? So then the big one was Uranium One, right? So now we have this whole Russia collusion thing going on.
Which is a good segue.
Right,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Uranium One, right? Hillary Clinton, along with Obama, signed off to give 20% of America's uranium to the Russian government, right? The company was Uranium One, a subsidiary to the Russian government, right? So that's 20% of our nuclear energy, right? This is how we power the United States, right? To the Russian government. 140 million was funneled into the Clinton Foundation after that, and months later, Bill Clinton's giving a speech in Russia for, I think, $500,000 plus. So all this stuff going on, in my opinion, is why Trump won the election, right? Having this knowledge that it wasn't necessarily a vote for Trump, it was a vote against Hillary Clinton.
That's a good point.
Right, so we can all agree that Trump, con man, bad businessman, probably has a lot of dealings with Russia, right? All these oligarchs, right? That's what they do. It's a dirty business.
Right.
The Clintons were a part of it. And not only were they a part of it, they took advantage of being Secretary of State.
Dirtiest of the dirty.
And that's at our expense.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not sticking up for Trump here. I'm just saying, for the last 2 years, it was Donald Trump won because of Russia collusion. And it just so happened that the report got kicked back to the Attorney General with no more indictments.
Which doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't. And you're
right.
right. It doesn't. You're right. None of us know what's going on.
Yeah.
But you can try and change the tune. The news stations can try and change the tune all they want. There's no indictments on collusion. All the indictments with Paul Manafort and everybody else had nothing to do with collusion, right? I'm not saying there's nothing in it. We're going to find out.
Right.
But there's two sides to the story. He colluded or he didn't collude.
Well, the Paul Manafort, it's not collusion to be in bed with those Russian assets.
He wasn't charged. He wasn't charged for collusion. It was obstruction of justice, lying to Congress, from what I understand.
Well, I always thought it was collusion and obstruction of justice.
No, there was not out of all the indictments that happened in the past couple of years, not one, not even Carter Page, on who was the one that the original surveillance got started on of the Clinton campaign.
Right, but collusion's not a charge.
I knew you were going to. This is what MSNBC last night. It doesn't matter. All I'm saying is that the mainstream media. Collusion.
Right, but that would never. That's not what.
It's not a legal term.
Yes,
right.
It wouldn't be what someone was charged with.
But you understand what I'm saying.
Obstruction of justice is the charge.
Right, but you understand what I'm saying.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
President Trump won the election because he colluded with Russia. That was a narrative that we're all being pushed. So there's a possibility that might turn out to be a conspiracy theory, right?
Sure.
Okay, so that's the problem, right? You have allegations being made against the DNC and Hillary Clinton now, right? So what happened was the GOP funded opposition research on Donald Trump during the primary. Fusion GPS was the company. Right?
The GOP or the DNC?
No, the GOP.
Okay.
Right, the Republicans.
Okay.
Right. During the primary, paid for opposition research on Donald Trump, trying to find dirt, right?
It's in the New York Daily News from 1980 on.
Yeah, right.
Everything about him.
Right. So after Trump won the primary, the GOP stopped paying for them services. Mm-hmm. Well, the Clinton campaign came in and said, oh, you know what? We'll keep paying for that. We'll keep paying for that. So now they're paying to get opposition research on now President Trump, right? Mm-hmm. This is where Christopher Steele, who is the one who got the research and made the Trump dossier, right? So he was paid by Fusion GPS. In his dossier or the report, his sources for this information is from the Kremlin, from the Russian government, right? That's public knowledge, from what I understand. So you have a British intelligence officer mm-hmm. gathering intelligence on Trump from the Russian government, which doesn't make sense to me because if Trump colluded, if he's colluding with Russia, why are they giving up dirt on Trump, right? So anyway, so now this is all being brought to light that, or even like with the emails, right? So Hillary Clinton's emails got hacked by Russia, mm-hmm. right? They never gave up their servers to the FBI or the DHS to show proof of that for them to investigate what's going on here. They scrubbed servers. They broke cell phones with hammers. So this is the stuff that goes on, mm-hmm. and it never gets brought to light. But we can get pounded with propaganda from the news that Trump colluded with Russia, when really it was the DNC who were getting intel sourced by their intelligence officer, right, that they're getting information from the Kremlin. So it just doesn't make sense to me here.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I think a lot of, I'm not an expert on this topic. I think the way the information was obtained is secondary to what the information is. As far as the collusion, You know, the meeting with the Trump Jr. and that Manafort, that's shady, and that's not out yet. And like, it's tough. Like on Twitter, you're seeing people, the right is vindicating Trump, and nothing's been said other than he's no more indictments. Whereas they're kind of, the indictments are, if they come at all, which who knows, would be from the Southern District of New York. That's the problem for them. Not,
right.
You know, because you can't, like, there's legal, there's constitutional questions about whether you can indict a president anyway. So, like, they're not, it had to be major. Like, literally, I don't think Trump directly, personally, I don't think he directly colluded with Russia. I think he might have got duped. I think there's a chance that he got worked, because I don't think, you know, he texts from it like an iPhone or something. Like he's not hiding anything. I think Kim Jong-un, I think the Putin, they play him. Like that whole North Korea thing, he goes over there. Those guys are trained freaking assets for like the government. They know how to work people mentally. Like they're. And then Trump goes over like a buffoon, kind of like, you know, I'm going to, you know, solve this, and then nothing happens.
That's ego.
I think it's ego. And he goes into these rooms for an hour, and you don't think those people are working him. So I don't think he's smart enough. So honestly, to pull off like a clip, but I think guys under him that are getting indicted and getting convicted, I think there was something rolling underneath him where he could just come out and be like, you know, Donald Trump, that's just Donald Trump. I think if there was collusion, it happened in a way that he was like, you know what? That's not my. If you guys are taking care of that, cool. But I don't think he was directly. But I think it had something to do more with Junior, Manafort, that kind of thing. But at the same time, like as far as who started it, the Republican, they did, and then the fusion and all that kind of stuff. It's like that's the legal term. It's more legal to like kind of attack the way the information came. Instead of like, you know, it doesn't really, and in court that wouldn't hold up. Like if you got the information in a fucked up way, that's case dismissed.
Right.
But as a, you know, an amateur politico, whatever, I just want to know I want to know the information.
Right.
The true information.
Yeah, right. But why doesn't anybody talk about Clinton's emails?
Because she's not here anymore.
What?
She's gone. She's not even. She's not a politician.
She's not relevant.
Right, but
she's not relevant. I don't know why.
She's
not relevant.
Whoa. She's relevant because she's the one who brought this dossier. She's the one who funded it.
He's president. It didn't work anyway.
Right. This is all relevant there, right? I mean, you're talking 2.5 years of nonstop news coverage on the president of the United States, no matter what you believe. This is the president of the United States. This is the country that we live in.
Right.
Right? And people are
I don't think Clinton, but Clinton didn't interject herself. Fox News they were obsessed. They brought Hillary Clinton into every conversation. And she lost. So as far as like the Clinton, that's coming from Fox News. They're trying to flip the narrative, whether the narrative they're right or they're wrong. They've successfully Clinton. You don't hear that on the other side, the other sides, whether they're biased.
No, you're right, but you do hear Russia collusion on the other side.
Yes,
is what I'm trying to say to you.
But the Clinton, that's what you brought up, like the email thing. I mean, something just came out with Jared Kushner and Ivanka. They've been freaking WhatsApp app or my
WhatsApp, yes.
WhatsApp,
right.
Talking like that's the same fucking thing, you know. Like, so if you're going to call out one, call out the other. But I think as far as like with Clinton. The way I feel, she's a relative nobody. It's over,
right?
As far as that, and he's the president. So if Hillary won and she did all that shit, she'd be in just much of the hot seat if she did it.
I don't believe that. That's what I'm trying to say. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I'm sorry.
There's no way of knowing.
Well, this is a good lead into the next topic here, because it seems that the backbone or the core of what you guys are talking about is a rush to information or to misinform the public with information by the media. So that was one of the topics here, is misinformation. So whether it is, let's say, Trump didn't collude with Russia or the DNC colluded with Russia, we're pushing this narrative one way or the other without having all the facts.
There are facts about this, though. That's what I'm trying to say to you. It is fact that they paid Fusion GPS, and it is fact that the sources were supposedly from the Kremlin. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say.
Well, then why the point I guess I'm going to get to, or the question I have is, why the misinformation?
Misinformation how?
If that is true, why is it being portrayed that Trump was colluding with Russia and not the DNC or the Clintons?
Because there's an obvious bias.
And it can
Right.
be as simple as that. I mean, what are your thoughts,
What do you
Mike?
mean?
Why-
It is that simple. And I'm not trying to like attack or
No,
I'm not trying to like.
this is just
I'm not
to
trying
get
to,
an
like,
understanding.
I'm
of,
just trying to say that, look, this country, we already agreed on this. This country is the most divided it's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
Trump's fault, no doubt, right? His rhetoric, it definitely adds to a lot of this, right? But people act like it would
I'm
be,
not so quick to butt when that comes. I think what he's doing is
I'm-
absolutely, totally. It's unique. It's never been done. It's
Sure it has.
It's polarized.
Right.
It's to the point. It's almost uncomparable to anything we've ever.
Correct.
So like,
No doubt.
I think a lot of people that defend him they'll lay it out there, but they don't spend enough time. And then they're what they really feel.
No,
it comes next.
My butt is.
I think the first part is more important than you might.
And you're right, but I'm
See,
not,
I disagree with you. I don't
Yeah.
think Trump is the main reason that the country's divided. I think it was.
I think it was starting before.
I think
Yeah.
it, yes.
Yeah.
I think it was
Yes,
the
of
media
course.
interpretation
Right,
of
right.
how they portrayed Trump, what they wanted him to be perceived as to the mass of the people,
Sure.
to get the pot stirred as it's never been stirred before. And then
he
Trump.
does himself no favor.
Well, that's what I'm just about
That's
to say.
the point I was making.
That's
He
the-
doesn't do himself any favor. That's
He
what I'm trying
he
to say.
only threw gasoline on that fire.
Yes, right.
Because he is the man that he is. He has the ego that he has.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's originally started with him. But go ahead.
No, the only point I was making, fellas, is that a big part of the reason the country is in the state that it's in is what happened in 2016 and how it all went down. And all I'm saying is that this whole narrative that Russia and Trump were colluding with each other, there's facts out there that point to the other side of that, right? That's all I'm saying.
I guess. I mean, I think there's going to be stuff in the Mueller report.
Sure. And I hope they make it public too, by the way.
So do I.
You know
So do
what
I. I mean, that'd be a major injustice to everyone.
Sure. And I hope they do. Everybody should know that.
the truth.
And that's the thing.
I don't know if there's a bombshell or not in there. I mean, who knows?
But
You know,
everything should be public. I think that's the main point of
that,
what we're
now
saying
that would be
today.
shady if he went and then Barr and then they retracted stuff right away. It's like, come on, man.
But with the exception of certain classified things, but this information should be to our record. It goes back to as simple as something with the news. We have to be just told the truth, and then we can make
But
our
they don't
decision.
do it,
And
right.
what a credit to Mueller for no leaks and stuff for 23 months. Like that's the kind of person. Personally, I wouldn't mind running the country. Somebody disciplined enough to no leaks. Can you believe that? Like, and there's
Someone who's an adult.
an adult. He's an adult in the room. So I never felt like I have my own opinions on like how, but I don't know anything. I think he knows everything, and like I'm happy that there's no indictments or something. Like I won't vote for Trump in 2020, but I wasn't an impeachment guy either.
Sure.
I was more, if it's going to happen, frankly, I'd be scared.
Well, right. It's not good for the
Because
country.
It's not
period.
good.
It's not good
yeah.
for anybody, you know? It's,
And you don't want it to be question marks around it. But as far as like misinformation, like what you were saying, like we were talking like our parents and the generation of like, if they see a video, they'll take it as gospel.
Right.
That's the way it was back in their day. Walter Cronkite came on the news, Dan Rather types, and what they said was they were God on
That was
earth.
gospel.
They
Yeah,
were
that was
God
gospel.
Right.
every other day but Sunday.
Sure.
And but now, I mean, you can make these things like the reporter from CNN. They made it look like he hit the girl when they sped up
Right.
the video, and
Right.
they make Rachel Maddow look pale, and they did the same thing to Trump. The guy they made him look they made her look like real awful, like real pale, and then Trump they made him look oranger. Like,
Oh yeah,
you saw that. Like
give Trevor Noah some more stuff to talk about every night.
yeah, and I think it's scary because it goes back to there's no longer one truth.
Right.
There's just too much propaganda.
Misinformation, and it's going to be
Right.
worse.
Right.
This is what I think about the Russia thing. The end on like that as far like how I feel. If they're messing around with like our shit misinformation, which they are, and Trump's pulling back on like our money to like research and get that, like that's not. That in itself is its own version of collusion. Maybe not in the Mueller report type, but like, what are you doing? If Russia, it's a fact that they're going to ramp up the misinformation for the 2020.
Well, that's what they're doing. They're
Then why don't we go after? Why isn't that a form of war? I'm not saying bring tanks in or drones or whatever, but why isn't that a direct attack on our
right, but I'll guarantee you
way
it's
of life.
more than just Russia, right? It's,
Sure. Oh,
you know what I
China,
mean?
yeah.
I mean, they're all doing it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, China's stealing technology
China with the
from us.
Huawei phones that
Yeah,
the
I
U.S.
mean,
government
it's-
was
but
worried
that's-
about bringing
right.
them in. They were spying, to
Sure,
potentially spy
yeah,
on us.
exactly. It's exactly what it was, right?
Right.
I mean, this is happening, across the board, and
But how do you go at like it's the misinformation? How do you guard again now that it's
I
out?
don't know how you do it, right?
What do you?
Well, we have to control it with our own media, so that means there has to be no bias.
They're
I think
complicit.
That's
But then you got like, this is how I feel. I believe all the networks are biased. I think Fox is outright state TV. As far as like you got Brett Baer and guys like Shep Smith they're actual John Roberts. They're actual reporters. Then it's the only one out of all them, like the CNNs and MSNBC, where they got the opinion shows at night with Hannity, Tucker, and Ingram. That is totally they'll tell a lie. And then when they get called on it, it'd be like, they'll remind people that this is an opinion show. And it's not. Whereas when you get a Chris Cuomo or a Maddow, they lean left, they're biased left, absolutely. They're anti-Trump, absolutely. It's biased, but it's not necessarily, it's not false.
Well, there's a lot of,
time out.
when you said Rachel Maddow, I think that's a big red flag. There's a lot
Rachel
of,
Maddow might turn out to be one of the biggest conspiracy theorists of the last decade. I'm telling you, just because she's Rachel Maddow and she's on the mainstream news and she's on MSNBC, if there's no Trump collusion, she will be in the realm of Alex Jones. Now I know it sounds
not anywhere close.
I'm being dramatic,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But 2 years, the walls are closing in. It's almost over.
Right.
Impeachment's almost here.
Right.
That's
crying on air.
right. I mean that.
But all that isn't. It's
With no facts.
over the top bias.
But with no
But it's
facts.
not.
But
It's
with no
not like
facts.
totally making up something.
Sure it is.
It's not a Hannity.
They have no facts, Mike.
But no, it's ramping up. No, because there's still. It hasn't been answered
There's
yet.
there's an investigation. So how can you say they colluded when you don't have proof of it? Remember back when this first came out, and they were reporting that 17 of our intelligence agencies said there was collusion. What happened to that? Right? It's just all bullshit.
Well, we don't know. Nobody knows anything until we read this report.
Okay,
as far as Rachel Maddow, I don't watch it, but I'm a big Chris Cuomo guy. I believe he's the fairest guy on primetime TV. He gives it to both sides. He always brings somebody on from the other side, and all the rest of them don't.
Chris Cuomo and Brooke Baldwin, the night before the election, the results came in.
Right.
Were on there saying that, well, this is it. Something that hope Hillary Clinton wins. I know we couldn't have done any more for her. So they're just showing her bias right there. Now, whether they play both sides, I'm just saying.
Yeah, if you watch the show, I admit that there's a bias network wide on
we can all admit that there's a bias,
right.
obviously for Fox, and there's a bias obviously for.
And I think that's a problem.
And the fact that, the point I was
that
making,
was the point I made.
They're not opinion. Like Hannity is straight opinion. He's there to rile you up and like make up shit about Obama, like and bicycle helmet and like how that's an attack on.
One of the biggest ways that I think people get their news now, and that I think people have gotten for a lot of years, are these shows. Trevor Noah show on comedy. Believe it or not, as dumb as this sounds, and I think it's a lot of. I don't want to, but I think it's a lot of the younger generation. This is how they get their politics.
Right.
From a Trevor Noah, from what's the Australian guy, Jeffrey.
I don't know.
He's not, but yeah, I know who you're talking about, but he's not as popular as like John Oliver, Bill Maher.
Right.
Which
Trevor Noah's pretty popular.
I think they're the two smart, funny guys.
But the thing about like you're bringing a guy from another country who has.
But that shouldn't mean anything.
But wait, let me finish my point. From another country.
We are the United States.
I get that, but my point is, he wasn't born here.
I know, but people aren't born here and become United States. Like that's what the whole experiment was about 250 years ago.
But here's the thing. Here's the other part of that. He was a comedian. He had nothing to do with politics. He wasn't
Trump either.
Well, Trump was a businessman, of course. Yeah. But my point is, he has a show where he's just being fed from a bunch of writers. I don't know if you've ever seen Trevor Noah's show, but it's all just focused on making fun of Trump, this and that. But that's how people are getting their information. So to that point about like Hannity, I mean,
it's the same thing.
Same thing.
They're reading the teleprompters. That's what they're doing.
I know. I just don't like when they're taking these comedians and making them
Like
a source.
They're not investigative journalists. You know what I mean?
Right. A source.
But they're just as qualified as Hannity. Is what I'm saying. If like, what does Hannity
Well,
know?
I'll give you an example of another one.
That a smart guy like John Oliver, like, listen to the two of them talk, and which guy do you think's got the brain, got more brains?
But that's the same for any news network, though,
Huh?
correct?
What?
Isn't that the same for any news network?
What do you mean?
Like, you can say that, watch Noah and Hannity, and look who's more articulate.
It's not about articulate. It's about fact.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So the overall theme is if you take all these people amongst both sides of the networks,
Right.
how do we change? The whole point is getting rid of the misinformation and getting rid of all the bullshit and the fluff.
Right, but it's never
Which
going
I
to
don't
happen.
think.
It's never going to happen with the mainstream news. It's
You
never
need
gonna
to have
happen.
more people, and I know Eric and I have gotten into this a few months ago on Twitter. Like, hey, I thought you said something like you can't do nothing about it or something like, and I was just like, I think that's the wrong approach. There's nothing we can do to fix it. So don't have it like a political kind of like a view on, like we can't do it. And I was just like, I think that's the wrong thing for people to back off and just be like, oh,
Just feel like there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, I think that would be the opposite of what does kind of, I think if the more people get engaged, and not engaged to where like you're spending, 12 hours a day on your phone, but the more engaged we are, the closer we are to an answer or like one truth.
Yeah.
Right, but okay. So have you found the way to get the one truth? Because I haven't.
No, I have not.
Right, but that's the point, right?
I think it's generational. I think people are older, are kind of set in their ways, and like I think it'll come in time. I think the millennials now that like it happens when they're there. Like it's not something that's going to be fixed in 2 years.
That's a good point. So I think what really needs to be focused on is the younger generation, the people who are going to be eventually running the country and taking over.
Right.
How can we help the younger generation not be misinformed, or like what we do is we'll see something and we'll go down various different avenues to try to see, at least for me, both perspectives.
Right.
And you could literally
don't share right away anything you see.
Right.
I don't care if it says NBC.
Number one,
But a lot of
BBC.
it's just throw out bias. Look, the only way you can move forward, like if you really want.
Well, of course, throw out
Any
bias,
kind of-
but how do you get the real information is the key. Even if you throw out the bias.
Well, that's where I start, right? You throw out bias.
Right.
That's
Okay.
first and foremost, right? And then you bring back critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Think logically, right? That's not always the answer, but
Personal,
what
logical
makes sense,
thinking.
what doesn't make sense.
And also like a more like, that's ultimately, critical thing. But I know there's sites online, and the answer is like, yeah, there's sites online. Go to the place where all the networks are there. There's graphs that show which ones are in the center and which ones are flaked to like both sides. And it's accredited. And you'll find that's where you should get your news.
All right, look, here's how you really do it, right? I'm not dismissing that. I didn't mean to say it like that. But one, don't watch mainstream news.
Period.
That's first and foremost, right? Too much bias, right? So then you have something like YouTube to say, where there's a lot of alternative media, but there's a lot of bullshit, right? So there's a lot of sifting through shit, yada yada yada.
And there's also agenda against.
But there's agenda, right? But
Then Alex Jones, like we were talking about. Later.
I'm not talking.
Yeah,
about,
that
I'm not
far.
talking about conspiracies. I'm
Okay.
talking about just common news coverage.
Okay.
Right. So there's these alternative media. There's these personalities that cover the news that lean one way or the other, but they cover the news, and there are a few that cover the news fairly and in the right way.
Right.
So the way I've done it, right, is actually Jimmy Dore is somebody who's a liberal. He's on the left. He's actually borderline socialism.
Right.
I don't know if that's
Such a scary word to you guys.
yeah, right. Well, just no, it's not. It's not.
Yeah.
But he's very fair, and the way I keep going back to him is okay. He's covering this, and then as the truth when the facts start rolling out mainstream, okay, what he was talking about prior lines up with what is concluded as fact, right? So little things like that, just trying to sift through the bullshit, find
Right.
somebody who does speak the full truth, covers and criticizes both sides of the aisle,
Right.
right, and just try and find that there's no
Yeah.
agenda attached.
And
to
this
it,
is
you know what I
another
mean?
like a dangerous thing that I think Trump does is on the Fox side. John Roberts, he was critical of Trump, like, and he was very, Fox leans right. Everyone knows that. He was critical like once or twice, and Trump didn't take his question, then glared at him the other day like that,
Right.
and won't and he's attacking him now. That's like my point where it starts, like pretty much my general point in politics and how I feel. It starts from the top, and we're all big boys. I mean, we don't need leaders.
Right.
We have our own families, and we're men and women.
But they should set the example.
Yeah, it's like, you can't do that to them, even when they're biased. Like, they were biased with Obama, but you can't make those attacks like that, because it's the First Amendment. That's like one of it's probably the most important thing that makes America American.
But
the
that's what's
Constitution.
scary, though, with all this censorship and all this just shadow ban.
And that can't happen from the top, is what I'm saying. The censorship, like, you can't you gotta, if it's a bad story, you gotta blow it off. You can't be thin.
Well, you have to, right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, look, if somebody's an asshole, let people call this person an asshole, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Lay out the facts and let people make their own interpretation.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. There's too much.
It's a horrible question to think about.
Sure it is.
To know that there's no really clear way to finally get to one truth. Like,
Right.
It's really like,
scary.
It's depressing
It
to
is.
think about that. It doesn't seem to, once it gets bad, how does it get better?
How do you guys think social media plays a part in all this?
Just like we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Just
People see something like, share,
Right.
and like they don't understand. Like people, I know, people that I know and my family or friends, and like they kind of feel the way they feel, and they'll share something without even knowing if it's real or fake, and that's both sides.
Well, that's the appeal to authority, right? So we turn on our TV, we watch the news. Oh, well, so-and-so said this, it must be true.
Right.
All right, we go on Twitter. So-and-so says this, oh, they have a blue check mark, that must be true.
Right.
So it's always that appeal to authority.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Or like, you see something on Facebook, like Obama, like in a mosque in like Egypt, and like you see he really is a Muslim or something.
Right.
And
But
it's
that's
shared.
what I mean. But that's sifting through the bullshit, right?
Right.
But
But there's
has no
there's a good
bearing
segment
on
of the
our everyday
population
life.
that's not sifting through that. That's what,
Correct,
yeah.
right.
That's a good point. So we're all saying this now, and this is actions that we take.
Sure.
The key is to what Mike said is how do you get the masses who might be triggered to just click and reshare something, not do any investigation? How do we change that? Can it be changed?
I don't know, because this is all about tribalism, right? Groupthink, hive mind, my team, your team.
Mob mentality.
Mob mentality.
It's funny.
And that's all it is.
To that point about tribalism, like think about it. What mankind, civilization, 4,000, 5,000 years, I don't know how far it goes back, but up until 250 years ago, we were tribal. If you're Irish, you're Ireland, England, Italy. This experiment in the United States is 250 years old, which is nothing
right.
in time. This experiment to bring it's not natural to have. It's a great theory, a great idea in theory, but the whole coming together, and it has worked, and it's worked in ways beautifully, but at the same time, it goes against so there's still that tribalism that comes out that's been around for years in our DNA before the United States was. So it's like,
It's still present.
It's still present.
Just the most recent
when
holiday.
things get tough, you back into your corner with your people almost. Like, and that goes against everything the United States is supposed to stand for. I think.
Yeah, but you relate to people or you don't relate to people, right? Like we're three
True.
white guys.
Mm-hmm.
My majority of my friends are white.
Right.
I'm not racist. I have black friends. It's all about what you're familiar with, right? And just because you have different pockets of people doesn't mean that you can't get along.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you absolutely. I'm just saying in a way that when you're in a bickering kind of thing,
Sure.
as far
It's
as
a
like
natural
tribal,
instinct.
it's a natural instinct because this American idea is foreign to human being civilization. Like it's only been a blip on the radar that we've been trying to do it which I believe is the right way, the American way.
Can you
take my
specify a
tired,
little bit?
you're tired, you're poor, and all that. Like that's a
Right.
great idea in theory, and we've made that work. And in ways, it's beautiful. But I think in tough times, like you said, tribalism, people will go back to that.
What do you mean by experiment? If you don't mind me
The
asking.
experiment, the Constitution, as far as the experiment that was the United States when we broke away from England,
Right.
was that all religions, all nations would come, and you could come here and have a
And
chance
unite.
for liberty, pursuit of happiness, all that.
Right.
That is a grandiose experiment that just wasn't that didn't exist really. Well, the French Revolution was kind of the spark, and then as far as the experiment, it hasn't been done. So what I'm saying, like the Roman Empire, all that kind of stuff, is like everybody's with their people.
Sure.
So now we're a people of all different.
Right. I think I get what he's saying.
You know what I'm kind of
saying?
Yeah.
When you had all the different,
I kind of got away from it, but yeah, you know what I mean. Like
when you had all the different countries in Europe and the people immigrating here from Europe, you know, you had your Polish, your Irish, your English, whatever. It doesn't matter. But what he's saying is the experiment was we're all supposed to just come here and be united as one and just be a people and not be. But what
there's bumps in that road.
Sure.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work out like that. Like we just can put on paper.
But I think the closer we try to stay to that, the better we'll be as far as like where do we go from here? How does it get better? If we keep that idea in mind that like it's supposed to be a little rock, but it's supposed to be this great, beautiful idea of democracy and how people can from anywhere, a comedian from Australia, but could all come here to America and could all go after like something. So I think when it gets, you know, tribal like that with the social media, I always think of that like, you know, this whole idea isn't very old at all. It's very new, you know, even though it's 250 years old.
Yeah.
You go against every kind of like instinct we have as humans to like bunker down with, you know.
I get what you're saying. That's how neighborhoods created. That's why, you know, the majority of Boston was Irish Catholic, and you know, New York was Italian.
And you see it in the home, in the housing, in neighborhood. Yeah, like,
it's just how it was. Like to your point, everybody thought everybody was just going to. No, everybody kind of took to their own, and then eventually that's starting as years go by, because 250 years isn't a long time. Everything's more integrated to the point where I think one day, if we aren't already, which I think we probably are, we're all going to be a mix of a bunch of, you know, different ethnicities.
But here's the thing, right? You have, I'm with you guys. Immigration, this country was founded on it, right? Immigrants coming in legally, come on in, right? That's how this country was built. But there's so many different beliefs, right? And then now you have laws based in certain countries. I know we're talking about the United States, but it's just so different, right? You have atheists, you have Catholics, you have Muslim, right? And it's just too much of this, too much of clash.
It's almost like is it doomed to fail?
Well, here's
look, we got along perfectly fine up until like the last few years, it seems like, right?
I wouldn't agree with that as far as the whole slavery thing and Jim Crow and all that. I don't think we got along perfectly fine. But
of course.
You're not talking about okay.
I'm talking women's rights.
Okay.
All that.
Generally,
stuff.
We've progressed. Yeah.
We've definitely progressed, obviously, right? But it seems like we're going backwards now with this division. You know what I mean? And I just think that I don't know how it works. I don't know how you make it better. I just feel that there's just too much different. And I'm not trying to be a pessimist here. I don't envision. There's just too much bullshit getting peddled, right? There's just too much division being pushed on everybody.
You have too many different types of people and backgrounds.
That's my point, right?
To be basically being fed bullshit. So what we were all just saying about we need to report what is accurate and let people interpret that how they may. So that's where it starts, number one. One of the things that really annoys me is when people say, oh, X country's doing this, so why aren't we doing this? We're America.
Right.
Well, number one, let's take a step back. If they're comparing us to somewhere like Sweden or something, what do they have, 4 or 5 million? We have like 800-some million people here.
We have 330 million people.
I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
But I know the point you're making. I wasn't
trying to
correct
you, but it's
you're right.
Of all different races, nationalities, religions, it's completely different. We're not talking about the same thing, so don't just assume. Now, that's not to say that we can't take things from another country, Canada, don't matter where, and implement parts of that. But we can't just assume that we're going to be able to implement something, whether it's something to do with healthcare, and it's going to work here like it works there. We're totally different. We're not talking. It's apples and oranges.
See, but here's where I feel we're missing what's really wrong here, right? I don't think it's necessarily who we are or how different we are, right? It's the system in general, right? So when you have an election and the candidates are Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, to me personally, the system's fucked, right? Out of 330 million people, that's who we have to vote for. Like I said, people didn't vote for Trump; they voted against Hillary, right? So it's this grand illusion of choice.
I do agree with that.
It's a grand illusion of choice, but our choices are corrupt people, right?
Right.
So you have the corrupt system where it's
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think in all cases they're corrupt people. I think the system's corrupt. I think there's no kind of way around.
I do think the people are corrupt in those cases.
In what? In
Well,
most cases, like how, like a president, like you say, every president's a murderer.
yes,
Like the minute you get the job, you're a murderer.
right.
So, and like if the system's corrupt, you're gonna be. There's no way you get it right. Like you have to make it sure, and you're corrupt.
Right.
The other way. So I think the system kind of creates that.
Right, but
I
here's
don't
the
think
thing. I'm sorry, Mike. You have to finish.
I don't think they're bad. I don't think they're corrupt. And some of them are.
they are corrupt.
Yeah.
And the only reason I say they're corrupt is because of lobbying, right?
Right. Well, not the Bernie Sanders and these people that don't take the corporate money. I think that's a way out of that kind of person.
Right, but it's corrupt that you had the system rigging a primary to defeat Bernie
Well,
Sanders.
that was that.
And
Yeah.
but that's my point.
That's
right?
what I say
So-
we have to get out of.
Which
Yeah.
how do you do it? Right? It's the system. Even liberal leaning news stations are down talking Bernie Sanders and any kind of socialist. Right? They don't want
Democratic
that shit.
socialism. It's not socialism.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Democratic
Well, it's
socialism.
two different things.
I understand
Yeah,
that
yeah.
they define it differently, right?
Yeah.
I'm just saying they're different from the establishment.
Sure.
Right? Their beliefs.
Yeah.
Okay. Now this up and coming wave of Democrats
Yeah.
are leaning that way.
I don't think it's like people go nuts about this AOC. She's a freshman member of the House, which isn't the Senate. I think people make a big put. I think that's people afraid of what they don't know kind of thing. And I think she's misinformed also. She's,
But you know what I think a lot of it is? I think it's people are tired.
it's also being pushed.
Well,
crazily,
no, I
you
think
know.
it's just like people are tired of thinking that they're making a mockery by having some of these people in any type of position. And I know you could absolutely say, your feelings towards Trump is a mockery, but I think it's just people are tired of that, like to the point I made about Trevor Noah. And it's not his fault because I believe the establishment is putting these people, as I would call them puppets, in places to spew their agenda. And I think people are just tired of this is what you're providing us, to Eric's point about these are our two candidates. You got
Right.
Trump, you got
Right.
Hillary Clinton, and people are, you know what I mean? It's just like this
Right.
is, so when people are reposting something that maybe she said and reposting it on social media, I think it's they're like, this is how ridiculous our world has become. And then you could do it from your standpoint of the left, of maybe something Trump said, and that's just goes back and forth.
Yeah, sure, it's
back and
fanatical.
forth.
Yeah. You'll find it on both sides. I mean, you'll find Devin Nunes is, he's on the kook side. Gets and some of these far, they're all anybody who stands on one end and can't see, I think is a kook, whether they agree with me or not. If you can't see a few things, that the right,
Of course.
you're a kook. Nobody.
And
gets
my point, mentioning Trevor Noah wasn't anything against him or someone. He came from South Africa. It was the point that he was a comedian, and it almost seems like that it's a mockery from the Democratic Party stand to put him in a position to be someone who is an influencer of people. They're just taking someone who had no background in U.S. politics, who was a comedian, and is now going to be at the forefront, or someone who's hosting a show.
Well, everybody has an opinion. Whether you're a comedian, that's the whole thing. LeBron should shut up and dribble. No, he can say he's an American. He
He's
can
entitled.
say
Anybody's entitled to their
So that's
opinion.
as far.
But to give someone a platform as powerful as network television to
Well, he's
try
a comedian. He's still a comedian. He's not a political.
exactly.
He's yeah,
exactly
right. Which there's no crime against being funny. And with
but
the
don't you think it's kind of a slap in the face to put someone
I don't think we can.
let's say a Republican goes and they put I don't know, some Joe Rogan as a comedian, and now, I don't want to use him because I think he's very well informed.
Yeah.
Let's just take any other comedian and put him into a role where now you're an influencer, and someone like that, he might not even have any real personal agenda anyway. Because the funny thing is, when Tommy Lahren went on his show and she was doing an interview, the two of them were spotted out later that night having a good time laughing. Those two could really give. I don't know this, but I'm just saying it could potentially where they could give maybe two shits about politics, and they are just puppets for an agenda for either Fox or comedy.
I think
what if that is the case?
I just think it's dangerous to go down the road that these people shouldn't be able to do this or say this. It's up to us
They should absolutely be able to. But
Yeah,
you know
it's up to
how?
us to filter out. Like if it's bullshit, then you're not going to listen to it, kind of thing.
I don't agree. I think you know how you should be able to do that, whether it's Tommy Lahren or Trevor Noah, is you earn it. So you go and you get your political science degree. You are, perhaps you're involved in politics in some way, shape, or form before you have one of those shows.
I mean, you could say that about Trump. He should have been a mayor or something before president.
But here's what you guys
absolutely.
are.
I don't disagree.
But here's what you guys are missing, right? A lot of these people that we're talking about, right? They're made to be influencers, right?
I just said that.
Movie stars. Music stars, and you did say that, right? Are they put out there to have an agenda?
That was my whole point. Like they may not. I'm not saying they do or they don't. They may not care either way, but they are puppets.
I think,
and because they like Trevor Noah, he's charismatic.
Mm-hmm.
He's funny.
Mm-hmm.
He speaks well.
Mm-hmm.
So now he could be a young voice for young liberals and when basically all he's saying the whole time is just making fun of Trump, and it's some of it's shit's funny. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But you're not really getting anything from it, and it's just spewing an agenda.
Right. I think where I disagree with you guys as far as like the I don't think there's a group of 5 people that are pulling the strings on it. I think it's a natural occurrence of people with money and people with influence, and it kind of happens more organically. I don't think there's a room somewhere and they meet up and kind of say, at the Marriott in New York, and they were like, "This is the agenda for this year." I think the agenda happens, and when it aligns, it's easy to say, "Oh, look, there's got to be somebody kind of pulling the puppet strings here." I think
the agenda is the ultimate form of capitalism and power, where they want to keep what they have, so to speak. And these people are smart people. They're using their platforms, whether they own a media organization or a news network, whatever the case may be. They're using them to push that. So it might not be like some boardroom meeting where everyone's sitting down.
But there is the Bilderberg Group, right? They all meet. Might be Belgium, maybe somewhere. But this is all the top people from around the world.
What do they talk about?
The world. No. I'm being serious. This is what they do. They all meet presidents, news, journalists, and it's all private. All private. Big business, corporations, all the heads come to one place.
And you're saying like they'll talk about what's being played on the radio and what's
I'm not
playing,
necessarily talking about specific. Okay, who are we going to make the top pop stars this year?
Yeah, right.
No, I'm just talking about they'll spin it as they're trying to do good for the world.
Yeah.
Look,
I almost feel like on that point, my personal opinion is that they have their own self-interest, and the dominant one prevails. The one that catches on with the public prevails. I don't think they're all in cahoots with this is how we're going to do it this year kind of thing. I think whatever catches on, like Apple a few years later when that took over from Macintosh or something, it was just the survival of the fittest. It was the dominant thing of the day. iPhone, and that's just my opinion.
I don't think it's like some. Well, I don't know. Here's what I'll say.
When
we were talking about the area out in California where all the it might be
Palo Alto.
Yeah, I forget the name of it too. It's so anyway, but it's crazy how these big tech platforms, whether you're talking about Google, whether you're talking about YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, are all uniting with a liberal agenda. And I think it's heavily influenced. They know, so the big corporations know where everything is going. I can go down a whole nother conversation about how I feel in the future, and Joe Rogan actually had somebody who's going to run for Democratic office on his show. It was a good podcast. But basically how artificial intelligence will start taking over the job roles of.
So why don't we gear ourselves for those jobs? You know what I mean? That's kind of goes back to.
Well, what do you mean? Like, so for instance, what they're saying is like truck drivers, and there will be no need for a truck driver. Mm-hmm. That'll be artificial intelligence.
They have autonomous drivers that can drive. So you have a human truck driver who can only drive for just say 16 hours at best before he needs to stop and take a rest. To where self-driving trucks can drive for ever.
Or even if you're talking about the basic
Silicon Valley, by the way.
Yeah. Or whether you basically take out your standard worker at McDonald's or what have you, where they can now be replaced with artificial intelligence or someone who could go right up and get their order and outspit your cheeseburger or whatever you need. Essentially, what they're doing is taking out the average American. And the guy on the podcast was talking about this and how it would absolutely destroy the economy. But it's these giants, like for instance, you look at Amazon. And Amazon, I think when it first started operating, and don't quote me on this exact number, but it was something in the billions, maybe $6 billion loss. And they did that because they wanted to make all their prices the best around so that they can take out as much of the competition as possible. And they were funded by some of these bigger corporations, and the whole idea was that they would gain all of the market share, which they've become such a dominant player. So you see all these major corporations aligning. Google, Yahoo, Amazon, and they're basically going to try to monopolize.
That's kind of my point. It's survival of the fittest, the dominant, and then it kind of engulfs, and it becomes to like the conspiracy theorists, like, they got to have worked this out prior, and I don't, you know what I mean? That's where
it's not. That
I don't know for a fact, but I just kind of feel like it kind of happens that way, where like Google, Amazon's huge, and then they all kind of fall in line just for the survival of their business.
Well, they're all one hand washing the other.
Yes,
type of thing. You know
right.
what I mean? It's all like we see where the future is. You tech giants are obviously creating the future. We're going to be a part of that. We're all going to align ourselves so that we can all continue to be the dominant, capitalist groups that we are.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like you can't dismiss when certain things outperform others, right? Like technology is a perfect example. Okay,
Right.
Apple had the best phone, and so on and so on. Like you can't predict that or corrupt that, if you will, right? It's not like there's some better technology company out there that can make a better phone, but they're being suppressed by some shady
dudes,
shady clandestine group. You know what I mean?
Right.
But you can prop people up as far as. Don't get me wrong. I understand that.
That's a good point. Yeah.
You could do something tomorrow and it could be a million views hit on such, but they come and go. Right. They come and go. Right. Yeah, but then you have the music industry. So as a musician, right, I'm sure you can admit that some of the most famous artists out there are not the best singers in this world.
Sure.
Right.
Absolutely.
So there's conspiracies, or it's not that hard to believe that you got to actually with the Harvey Weinstein whole situation in Hollywood, right? You're either going to do this, and this, or you're not going to work in this town.
Right.
So that happens.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Sure.
So I mean, they can prop people up, right? Like Jay-Z, Kanye West, they could be shut down tomorrow. Now they might be a little bit too big, but my point is, if you're some hot star, right? We're putting you on the radio. All right, we're going to dump all this money into promoting you.
Now, and do you think all those people at that level that can prop you, do you think they all know each other?
I have no doubt. In the music industry, I don't think
Jay-Z's part of it.
No, I don't. Not just music, like TV, anything. So you think like?
Well, here's the thing. So we've established that we think the Democratic Party rigged the election for Hillary.
Yes.
And we think Bernie should have been the candidate.
Yes.
Who was one of the biggest influencers for Hillary's campaign? Jay-Z. Jay-Z trying to get the black vote for Hillary Clinton.
Sure.
How are those two aligned?
I don't think they have to be necessarily.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I kind of understand.
They don't have to be aligned.
How he
they believe in her. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he does not believe in Trump. Those,
Right. I just look, man. In the grand scheme of things, there's a lot of corruption at the top of the pyramid, right? In politics, right? And all the places that are leading the country, one, and should be setting the example, two, and that we put in office to have our best interest, right? That hasn't been happening for decades, right? Whether you might feel a little bit more better about this one president than the other, right? And I just don't know how we fix that, right? There's lobbying so you get rid of lobbying, I think personally that will squash a lot of it, right? Because if you're donating, these super PACs are donating X amount of dollars, well, they're getting something in return, right? That's going to benefit that corporation or whoever. And that happens all the time.
Right.
I mean,
That's dirty. It's dirty.
It's all
and there's
dirty.
dirty
That's
money.
been happening for years.
But
Obviously,
that's
we all
my
know
point,
it.
but they
right?
never want to get rid of that, right?
Yeah, and also with the new thing like that's been in the news lately with the electoral college. Like,
Hey, that's crazy.
it's an old thing. Well, I think one person, like, you know how we solve all that? One person, one vote. We all vote online somewhere. It's no voter. Just like figure out a way.
I thought about that too.
We don't have to make it so hard.
Yeah.
Like because the electoral college is outdated. I'm
Sure.
not saying this as a Democrat. Like if it could hurt my guy but I just think,
Sure.
I'm not saying it as like a team, any member
I
of a
don't
team.
disagree.
I think one person, one vote, and we all just vote, and whoever gets the most votes wins.
And that's funny you say that because I thought the same thing, right?
The electoral college had a bigger deal back. It made more sense when we weren't when technology wasn't like it is today.
Right. You had the means to do it.
So I don't care.
Well-
I don't care who it benefits. I just think it's simple. One
Some-
person, one vote, and then like you were saying about
But I'll push back real fast.
Yeah.
Some people might push back against that about, well, that's mob rule. Well, that's mob rule. Now, I don't even know how to articulate all that or whatever, but
Well,
that would be
I don't
pushback
see it
on
as
that.
mob rule. I see it more as it doesn't really help the future of the Republican Party because young people and the world, the America is shading, the shading of America. We're getting dark, immigrants and
Right.
so it doesn't help so you're going to get kicking and screaming from, the top,
I just know that. Well, that was the whole
because
thing.
it doesn't benefit
Right.
the other side. But as far as I don't care if it benefits who, I just think that would make more sense. But
Yeah, I have no problem with the one person, one vote. I
Well,
really
in
do.
the spirit of true change, and to your point, Mike, you were saying that you'd like to get rid of the Electoral College. One of the things that I think could actually make some change and benefit all Americans is should there even be a two-party system, number one, and should there only be one president or one person making the majority of the decisions? Now, I know there's people underneath them, and obviously
You're right, but they don't though, right? There's not a two-party system, right?
well, I know obviously, but there's a two-party dominant system.
But this is what I mean. But this is, in my opinion, this is the system. This is what they created. This is what
so I'm
they
talking
push.
about blowing up the system.
But how do you blow it up? They won't. That's what I'm trying to say to you.
A revolution, I think,
don't-
is the only way.
Right.
It sounds.
Now, I'm not.
the revolution will not be televised. I think.
Yeah, right.
I think. Trump's not a Republican. Like that's the thing. Like when
not.
Trump was actually really looked upon, especially years
liberal.
ago, as a Democrat.
Yeah,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
like
He donated
I have
to-
friends.
well,
I have friends of mine, friends of ours, that'll say like, my father was a Reagan Republican, and like that's why I'm like they're two different. They're totally opposite policies
Right.
and all that. So it's
Right.
like to be like blindly a part of a party.
Right. Well, that's the tribalism.
That's the tribalism.
Tribalism.
That's it.
Because there's no correlation between those two.
Right.
Like there's no. So that would be interesting. Like the two-party systems.
The only reason I would even maybe label myself as a Republican, because I obviously lean right with a lot of the views, but the main standpoint for me is really being anti-establishment and being anti-everything we're talking about today.
Sure.
Which is having these big corporations influence government, influence the people.
Our best
And-
interest is not at heart. It's just not.
Absolutely
it's
not.
not.
That's
Period.
kind of libertarian, isn't it? Like
Well, absolutely.
Sure,
I
less
do.
government. Look,
Yeah.
less government is. I don't need.
But
more
I think,
government. We
but
don't
I
need
guess
more
the point I was
government.
making is most people would probably view it more as not what I just said as libertarian, but me in general, it's more Republican. But it's actually, to your point, more libertarian.
Yeah, right. Obama said something that I really agreed with. Like towards the end of his presidency, he said something to the point where like it was as people were getting scared about democratic socialism. Always like he's like he said something to where it benefits us as a people, as police, road crews, like
There's
where
socialist programs.
where it benefits us to be together. That's great. I'm for that. But also as a capitalist, where it benefits us as a people to aspire personally for gain, I'm with that too.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
There's a medium to be both of those things. But in the the toxic environment of the conversation today, you either got to be one or the other. Like no, social programs.
I hate that.
Yeah, social
I hate
programs.
that.
And I
Social
agree with you
programs are
100%,
fine.
Mike. I agree
But
100%.
also and that's and a lot of Dems get a lot of and I'm not speaking for them. I know the way I feel. The things that we can do together to progress and to like getting together for highway repair and stuff. We need each other for that. But I also want that pursuit of me.
Absolutely.
That's what made this.
Where if you're willing to work harder, you can earn more, and you
should-
can make a better life for yourself.
And one, they don't have to be exclusive. You know what I mean?
No,
They
I agree
They can work
100%.
together. And when he said that, I'm like, that's literally what how I feel.
I think that point, Mike, is how the majority of the country would feel. I think, like we were saying,
that's my point. Go ahead.
like we were saying earlier, I think the majority of the country is socially liberal. You know, nobody cares. Like, it's not 1950. Two gay guys get married. I mean, I'm sure there's pockets of the country that doesn't, or people that don't. I'm not saying that, but the majority of the people, I would agree to that point, are socially liberal. Are would back everything that you just said there.
Right, but that's what I mean. The establishment won't allow it. They don't push it. Right? You would think that's common sense, right, Mike?
Yeah.
We can make this work. Everybody come together.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Why-
Work hard, be creative, come up with something.
Why don't we
And you
see
get
that?
rewarded
Why
for
don't we
that.
see that?
We
That's a
do
good point.
see it.
No, why don't we see it on social media? Why is more of what we see negative?
Because it's nothing but that's okay. So you have the polarizing president Donald Trump. That's what he does, right? Attack. And then you have it's nothing but pointing the finger, right? It's all emotion, and the news and TV. It's nothing but rouse you up. Just imagine if the news tried pushing what you just said, right?
Yeah.
Just imagine if politicians followed suit, or vice versa. Politicians and then the news follows suit. Just imagine. Why doesn't everybody just come together?
John Lennon.
Right?
Yeah.
Look, it sounds it's a blanket statement.
Yeah. Right.
Right? And there's a lot of variables. I get that. But
right.
in the grand scheme of things, think about it. Right? Treat others how you want to be treated.
Right. Right.
It's just-
and try
it's
to
just-
and try to see it through somebody else's eyes.
Right.
I always go back to that. It's almost like a natural thing to like that immediately think about it like it wasn't. It's
have
not
to.
me.
I agree.
Think
You
about that.
have to, whenever you see a link or you see an article and it supports or backs, let's say, your point of view, make sure you do yourself a service and look at something that contradicts that. And then, something that you feel, a site that is logical, that is trying their best to give you the facts so that you can see both perspectives. And that's the whole reason
Right.
we're here today, is to get
Right.
every perspective and see and really try to dissect why people get as crazy and as triggered as they do, and they want to, support their side, or they want to prove that they're right. It's natural as humans, because
I think our president could do a better job of helping that.
Sure.
He should, as far-
I agree with you. He should be the benchmark. He should lead that.
benchmark as
Right,
far
you know
as
what I mean?
adult in the room. I mean, nobody needs to be tweeting that much a day. It's embarrassing when I'm on Twitter that much a day, but he's, I'm sure he's got better things to do. And, as far as like that Discord, you can't, he's got his base, and they'll do anything. Like literally he could shoot somebody, like you said, and his base would be there.
right.
But there's also more than half the
I
people in
wouldn't
the
I wouldn't
country.
say his base. I'd say more the radical part of his.
Look at the
followers.
McCain thing. The people in the Senate,
Could you
they're-
break that down for me?
Oh my God.
I don't.
Oh, he
didn't
just
follow
he
that.
trashed him again on. McCain's been dead for 7 months, and he
Right.
said, and he went off at a rally saying why he's not,
Why
he doesn't like him,
right.
and what he's just not his type of guy and stuff like. The guy's dead.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
let it have some respect.
Yeah, have some
Right.
respect. And it was at a military thing, and he's a prisoner of war, for Christ's sakes. I don't agree with McCain's policies, but there was no doubt in my mind ever that he was a hero. He's a prisoner of war. Like, he served his country. I have the most respect for those people. So anyway, but Trump literally went off on anything where if it was anybody else who did that, they would have been after him.
Well, I have no doubt that if Obama had said something like that, he would have obviously been vilified in the media for sure.
To absolutely another level. For some reason, a guy who no military background actually skated on the draft because of bone spurs and all that kind of stuff. Con man from New York. He's not even, from where the meat and bones of the Republican Party is based, has conned these people to kind of believe that anything he says. And you got Lindsey Graham and these people that won't even stand up and be like that, call it out. Be like, yo, man, that's my parent. The family's dead. They're grieving. The concept of right and wrong has really gotten shaded. It's cloudy now. People people can't blatantly realize something if it's wrong because they're worried about being reelected, which gets into like, I don't think they should be there for 6 years. Like, I think the term should be much less for people in like Senate. They're more worried about getting reelected than they're all afraid of Trump right now on the right side. If they step out of line, Trump will bash them, and like the crazies on the far side will be all over them.
No, I absolutely agree. And I think the problem that we keep coming back to is that the people, the American people, really don't have people at the top representing them or have their best interests at heart. It seems whether you're on the left, whether you're on the right, whatever side, that's not happening. So, what we're trying to do right here is figure out how that can change.
I think you made a point on it a few months ago. You said something like conversation. That's the only thing. And it's not going to happen overnight, but I think over a generation, more conversation, less this, as I pick up my iPhone, less this, more,
more understanding where people's viewpoints are, I think.
What are you doing? A podcast, stuff like this? Like it's dialogue. I'll leave here less, dug in on a belief than I was when I walked in.
Yeah.
And that'll edge a little bit and it might take 30 years, but who knows if it'll ever get to the center.
Well, the point of that is that we don't have to change each other's minds or viewpoints, but as long as we have an understanding of where people come from and why they think that the way they think, we all have a better realization of where people are coming from and why, and what they want. And it seems like we all have a common goal, which is we all want the best for the American people.
See, and I agree with you both 100%. I agree that there is common ground. I agree that when you turn off the TV and social media, things roll smoothly. Yeah. Right? You have conversations. You're not worried about, there's no label. Like, you're not walking on the streets and I have an R or a D over my head.
Right.
Right? You know what I mean?
Like, I on Twitter, on my feed, there's people in there that, I'll disagree with everything they said, but when I would see them in person, I wouldn't think about any of that stuff. And
exactly my point. You said right away, you go on to social media, there's a label.
Yeah.
Right? There's a label.
But in real life, if I would see them, I wouldn't even think I'd be like, yo, how you been?
Right.
That would never come up. It's never come up in our personal dialogue ever.
If you're a good person, you're a good person. If I meet you outside and we strike a conversation, okay. Well, obviously, you make your first judgment, right?
Right.
Okay, right. I like this dude, or I like this girl.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not. Well, what are your political beliefs?
Yeah.
That's not it, right? So when you're engaging and putting yourself around this constant tribalism or negativity, that's what it all stems from. Yes, it's reality, and the scary part about it is that now the politicians are engaging. The president of the United States is engaging, right? Now the news is
doubling down.
Yeah,
exactly.
Respectful dialogue is I think is vital.
It's getting worse.
It's getting worse.
Exactly, and that's where it changes.
Yeah.
Right. That's a bubble. That's all that is. Twitter is just a bubble of people. Yeah, there's a lot of people that go on there, but just because somebody with a blue check mark has a view and then there's 10,000 retweets, well, that's not what the whole world thinks or the whole country thinks. You know what I mean?
But they're heavily influencing people.
They are very, very much so.
To Mike's point, where I might tend to agree that a lot of the people aren't doing their research. They are just retweeting things and taking that old school approach of our parents and just, because to your point, they have a blue check mark or they say that this is the way it's supposed to be.
Now, do you think is there a guy, are we so divided? What if a guy came in on the Democratic side or the Republican side and was totally like, yo, we're divided here. I'm not going to have time for this shit. I'm like, we're going to get this together. And he speaks respectful to minorities. Is that possible, or do you think people will be dug in so much?
I absolutely think, and I think we've seen that with the way that the swing states have voted for Obama and then voted for Trump. I think people genuinely want somebody who they feel that has the overall good of the American people at their best interest. Mm-hmm. I think people do genuinely want that, and I think that's why, whether they're being conned or not on any side, they all vote for either candidate that they think has those best interests at heart. To give an example, when I was listening to Rogan's podcast, he had the Democratic nominee who was, really speaking about the economy and artificial intelligence. I loved a lot of what he had to say. Something he was getting in too deep about, giving some type of surplus to like all Americans.
$1,000 a month.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily agree to that.
He thinks that would stimulate the economy.
He thinks that would stimulate the economy. I don't necessarily know if I agree 100% with that, but I did like a lot of the ideas he had. He seemed, perception again, like he was for the overall good of the people.
Right.
So throw labels out the window. I think when you have that person.
You don't think that Hannity that night would like, say you and I felt that way. You don't think that night he would hammer him?
Right.
To try to bring him back down.
But you're right.
He absolutely might, but I don't give a shit what he says.
Show him a picture with a stripper or something.
But I don't give a shit what he says because I don't pay attention to Fox News.
Right.
Like I
That's
mentioned
the
to you on
appeal
one
to
team.
authority. That's what it is. That's the appeal to authority.
Yeah.
We let them shape
dictate.
our views.
Yeah. Right.
That's what's going on. And not only would they knock down a candidate like that, these candidates won't even get any coverage, period. Look at the last election. It was Trump. That's all it was. They propped him right up. Right? They never thought he was going to win the presidency. They never thought that. So it was ratings, propped him up, and his message got out. And people saw that message, related to it, whether people want to believe that or not, and he won the presidency. So that's how much power the social media, these news stations, they do have.
Yeah.
I mean, they can this is what I mean with making somebody a star. When you get propped up, they can do it. I mean, it's really.
They could do it to the 10th power now because the people get behind it.
Yes,
too.
and it's
crazy.
trending.
Now, do you think Trump wins 2020?
With the way the Democrats are playing the game right now, I think they'd be better off not playing his game, focusing on what they want to run off of, for the economy or whatever it may be. Two wrongs don't make a right.
Don't make it focused. If the Democratic Party wanted to win, I think they have to not make it as much about Trump and more about, I think that was one of their downfalls.
Policies.
Off
What's
of
their policy?
policies.
What is
Absolutely.
their policy? I mean, honestly, God, Mike, what?
So, for instance, if Bernie
question.
Sanders won the Democratic nomination, I think he's president of the United States right now.
Yeah, I think he wins.
He would have been.
Yeah.
He would have been.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't want that, though. That's what I'm trying to say to you.
That's our main point. Like, if somebody looks at me as a Republican and I'm like, I already saw the corruption in the Democratic nomination, I'm not voting for her.
Correct.
And I think Trump doubled down on that by calling Hillary crooked Hillary and this and that. And guess who he won? Because of a combination of, to your point, it's not Hillary, so that's why I'm voting.
Yeah.
And then him being knowing how to pull those puppet strings of the people and say crooked Hillary and really get that triggering.
He's a brander. He's a brander.
He frames the situation perfectly.
And Obama was the other end of that spectrum. He was very charismatic, very likable.
Change.
So, you know what I mean? That's.
I think right now right now I think he wins.
I do think he wins.
I don't think I see anything because the Democratic Party's so split.
Right.
It's you got Biden, who's probably more to center, is more to the center.
Well, compared to the
beta, or compared to like Bernie and all that, but it's split. They don't have a message, and I do, unfortunately, I do think they're going to play the game to out Trump.
Now, what do you think? Do you believe?
I don't. I think they got to get back to policy and get that worker vote back.
No doubt.
And I think that worker vote that they lost, that was major. I think they got to get away from the Black Lives Matter as much, and like the LGBT as much. It's always got to be part of the platform because they're people and
they're heartstrings.
You should pulling on the heartstrings.
You should always care about people, but I'm just saying it. I think they're going to go.
But
after.
that's what annoyed people is because they were saying that this one side doesn't care about people, and people are like, "Fuck you!" Like I don't care about people, or you're calling me a racist. You don't even know me.
But they're going so far. But look, this is what.
Or you're trying to make everybody. The media really made a push to make any Trump supporter. He has his radical. They made any Trump reporter a racist,
right? A racist, a bigot, a racist, a deplorable.
And that pissed people off.
Which is not. It's not true. That's
exactly.
Not true. They're not.
It's such a silly statement.
It's silly. I think they, personally, I never adopted it, but I would, it'd be easier if more people called him out when he was wrong and didn't kind of just give him a pass. I think it'd be easier to be like, but it's so polarizing. But like I said, I think right now he wins, and it's not even close because I think they're going to go. And I think they're going to talk shit. Like, I think they're going to do their best to fucking out-talk shit Trump, and nobody out-talk shit Trump.
No.
He'll win that game.
And isn't that just sad that that's what, like,
It comes down to that,
that
right?
we're thinking already this election is just
we're
going
in
to
a
be...
social media world, and it's reality TV now.
Well,
so,
right.
like, you know, it don't even matter if you're banging porn stars now.
Right.
That would have been disqualifying. You literally would have had to move out of the country in
Sure.
like the 80s or 90s for that.
Right.
Now you can just bang porn stars, and you can do whatever. It's a different world, and I think without policy, they're screwed. And I think they're you know, the candidates, they're split, and the party's split.
Mm-hmm.
But
We have old guard, new
Who do you
guard.
think are some of the stronger Democratic candidates?
Biden, I think, is still Biden. I think Bernie's. I think Biden's. You don't think Biden's?
What's that guy? Alex? Was it Alex Yen or what was it?
Yang?
Do you think he has any shot?
Absolutely not.
No.
No, I don't think so.
Bernie's got a shot. Biden's got a shot. Beto's got a shot.
I think Biden. Now, look, I'll be honest. I haven't really delved into all their speeches and so on and so on. But I mean, look, man, you got anybody who is okay with third trimester abortions.
To that
I
point,
mean, that's
well, and
that's
that's
pretty
just
deep.
that's scary, man. And
It's
that's
very
not labeling saying
Here's
all
my
Democrats.
here's my problem with that. That was totally missed. The whole New York thing, which was totally mischaracterized and like fake news, like you couldn't spin it at all.
Learn me, please.
That whole situation could only
because I'm
happen.
hoping that's the
Oh,
case.
absolutely. It got pressed like literally. If you were a Democrat, you want to murder babies. That
No,
had nothing.
that's
that,
just a stupid.
This could only happen if the woman's life was in jeopardy, and it still had to be doctor. It still had to be something to where literally you could have the baby, you could die. That's the only way it would be signed off or allowed. It wasn't something you could just walk in and be like, you're in the third trimester. No, that wasn't it. None of that shit was explained in the whole New York thing. What they did wrong in that New York thing is cheered at the decision and like, what are you doing?
That's sick. Like, you should
That's
never
sick.
cheer
It's
for that.
gross.
I don't care what you feel, and I you know, I look at it's such a.
But that goes to tribalism. Like, people are
and
that
it's such
sick.
it's such an issue that is so. Hey, we're men, and yeah, we should. But you know, I think it's a women's. I don't think I have the authority on that. But the way I feel about it, that was miscast, and it was totally by the people that are like totally jumped on it. Like, oh, these people want to. This was only in the rarest of like 1% things where a death could happen. These
Now,
women
why
could be
isn't that
these
a-
women could be
You're
poor.
talking at full term, like ready to give
Even
birth.
after
see, that's
supposedly
what I
that
heard
you
as
could
well.
give birth and they could terminate the baby after the baby was born, which just
Yeah. Which is
curdles my
disgusting.
stomach,
It's
man.
disgusting.
The way I understand it is these women. It's got to be in a position where they could literally their life they'll die. They have
Right.
the kid. They could
contradicts what we're saying,
They could have
though.
children at home. They could be the sole source of income. Like, what do you at that point? Like,
If someone's life's on the line,
that's
we get
that's 100% what it was.
But I think there's more to it than that, though.
I think that's what,
Because
from
one
my
of-
understanding, that's
one
what
of
it was. But
the-
it got totally miscast to where like people were literally just didn't want to. That's sick to just think you don't want to have the baby and everything's fine.
Yeah,
and you
but
can have abort. No, that's
see-
not. It has to be the rare case of,
See,
of
we'll
death.
have to look at that because
Yeah.
no, not, and I'm not
And what I don't-
discredit
what-
because I really want to know.
Yeah,
now.
and what I
really wanna
disagree
know.
with totally was how they reacted to it. That I'm like, who in their right mind, whether you feel one way about that topic or not, it's not a good situation either way.
Right, period.
you know?
That's the problem with the radical tribalists on either side is that they're so willing to support their side
Yeah,
that they would cheer something like that. Like, either way, if you're right, they're cheering
It's
a
touchy.
woman who almost died.
Yeah,
and being,
it's
like,
not
that's
something to.
That's not something you cheer.
Exactly. So my point on that is that it's such a touchy thing, and like I don't judge either. Like I don't judge that. Like that's not.
They shouldn't.
I
They
don't
shouldn't
come
be
in-
allowed to give birth and then do that because that's just murder.
I don't. Yeah, I don't.
If you've given birth,
I haven't heard that. I've heard the third trimester thing, and that's only in situations where where death. So it changes the game. But that wasn't when people are retweeting shit. They're not saying that. They're saying these people like are cheering
They're gonna
like
kill baby killers.
Yeah,
Right.
that's not true.
And this is the
That
problem
not true.
with the general public not being able to get the accurate facts on
Right.
what's really happening.
Yeah,
Right.
but even so, even if there are accurate facts, with the tribalism, they don't even accept the accurate.
They don't. Well,
and that's what a big
Right,
problem
like
is.
yeah, you
know
could
what
say
I mean?
that and they'd be like, no, that's bullshit.
Yeah, it's
It's
bullshit.
like what?
I didn't
Why-
believe that.
like, what?
Right.
It's such a touchy subject. Like I just it's not one of those things that I would ever cheer, and I think it would.
yeah,
it would
because
only,
it's a sad situation either way.
The whole
lives are on the
situation's-
line. Like, but it's not. I respectfully back away from that topic. Like, you know, like it's just not for me. Like I do feel one way about it, but it's not. I don't pound my chest the way.
Right.
Feeling that way.
Right.
I feel that way, and then it's like it's not for me. I don't have children. And
Right.
My
like, you know,
personal
Right,
feeling
right,
is when
right.
you get late in the game, and when I heard that
That's tough.
they could actually,
That's tough.
yeah, like even if you're late in the game, but when I heard that they could actually give birth and then murder,
Right.
that's not abortion anymore. That is murder.
You know what? And I don't want to.
And like I said, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
But I do know the situation was, it couldn't even happen. It would have to be like signed off. Like if literally
To
death
your
was on the
point,
line.
That's
Yeah.
understandable. I
And
think
then
people
this woman
understand.
dies, and she's got 3 kids at home, and nobody raised a baby. Sometimes there's a tough decision to make. I don't know what the right
You don't even have
decision
to
is there.
explain yourself
Yeah.
for that.
I will
Because,
say
like,
this.
understanding people will get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know-
The argument against that is an argument that the argument is they feel there's more detail than what you're saying. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying that there's a lot of pushback because of what you're saying, that it's maybe either misunderstood or
You're basically saying that the baby could be fine.
yes,
Yeah.
well, that's what people believe.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
And that,
I don't know what the truth is
and
about
there
this,
is
right.
always that chance.
Which
But when
all
you-
goes back to us, the general public, not being able to get 100% the true facts.
See, now that's it. And I know we're kind of circling around the same topics here, but as far as news station goes, you know, a lot of it isn't downright lying, but it's half truths, right? So they'll tell the one side of the story.
It's like watching a movie based on a true story.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's just a bunch of half truths, you know, and that's why, you know, if you really do want to see change, or you really do care, and you're really fed up with all this bullshit, you know, I mean, I personally feel that you get rid of Trump, and everything's back to quote unquote our normal standards. Just still going to be the corruption. Just still going to be all the bullshit at the top of the pyramid, right? Just still going to be people living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's what people care about, right? The three of us can sit here and we live a happy, comfortable life. I mean, I don't know how to categorize it, but there are people out there who are struggling.
Right.
There are people out there who are paycheck to paycheck, and you know, we can have our opinions here and base them off of, you know, where we are in our lives, but there's a lot of people out there who are really, really struggling. You know what I mean? And it ain't getting better for them.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's why I feel Trump did win. A lot of the shit, he's a con man. You know, he is doing some good for the country. You can't deny that. Right? He's. I don't feel that he's the best person to be in office, but aside from his rhetoric and his antics on social media,
Right.
he's not doing that bad of a job as running the country.
Right. I would disagree as far as, you know, people are struggling and he's doing like that, like with the health care. Those people don't have, like, people could die and like, and, you know.
I think that's wrong. Very
Yeah,
wrong.
you know,
Right.
so like, you know, and he's attacking McCain over that. Like he came in and he wanted to repeal and replace. It's like, you know, some people, the healthcare system, the Obamacare, it's flawed.
Why? But why?
But
That's my point.
Why? Because it's a work. It needed more time to work. It needed
Because
to work
of
through
this-
its kinks.
But just period.
But my point, is that it needed to work through its kinks, and it didn't have enough time. And then it was constantly just, and before it could be worked out, it was attack and get rid. But like I said, people are struggling. Poor people, like that aren't us, could die if their health care is taken away. I thought the kinks needed to be worked out. I don't know if it ever will, but I don't know as far as
When you look at
people struggling. I think that goes both ways.
See, I think
Yeah.
that's a good platform to run on. Like healthcare for all, I think that's 100% of America can get on board with. I would think, right?
Right. You
Yeah.
would
But
think.
when you start incorporating the other hardcore socialist views or Democrat, whatever it is, that's where you lose X amount of people.
I think you use
right?
a socialist like.
I'm just saying.
it's
I'm just.
Democratic Socialist. It's a totally different. That's
Right.
one's Russia and one's like Sweden. Those guys are more like Sweden and Finland. The Democratic
yeah,
Socialism,
right, not
yeah.
communism
Yeah,
and
yeah,
dictating,
right.
And I understand that, you know, and Sweden, the demographic is different. The
Right,
population
yeah,
is
like you
different.
said earlier, it's
There's so
not
many different
less
variables.
people.
You know what I mean? So I don't even know how that would even work. I don't feel there's anything wrong with the capitalist society. I just feel that corruption at the top of it is the problem. A free
Right.
market, I think, does work. Right? It has worked. But when you start getting these power players, forming monopolies and taking over the system,
The problem,
it just kills it for everybody.
It's capitalism would be fine, but it's the people at the top are creating unfair advantages from themselves,
That's
and
my
they're
point.
corrupt.
Right,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Now, the issue with healthcare, it's a very, very complex issue for a country of this size.
Very.
So the point we made earlier about Sweden, take politics, take left, take right, take all that bullshit out of it, and really focus on how can we make the overall best healthcare system for this amount of people. And it is very, very tough. I did a focus group on this, and they were talking about all different types of healthcare that we have now, where a lot of people have healthcare programs from their company. Some people had the Obamacares and all the Medicares that are out there. There's a lot of different plans that we have out there now. One of the main themes and one of the main issues that comes up with this in terms of universal health care was the quality of care.
Correct.
That's one of the biggest things. Like, people want to talk about Canada, but nowhere in the world do they have, and I'm not saying all people have this, but we have the best health care, supposedly, in the world. Okay?
As far as coverage or as far as
In
Doctors,
terms of specialists,
like the
in terms
specialists,
of
yes, right.
accredited specialists,
Okay.
In particular, here Philadelphia has some of the best hospitals in the country.
Absolutely.
But what they think would happen is a lot of what we see now with these minute clinics, where you're getting, because of the sheer volume of people,
Everyone's going there now.
Right.
everybody's
No one's
going
going
there.
to- yeah, they're
Because
going
of
to
the sheer volume of people, we would not be able to accommodate the people that now are influxing hospitals, doctors for
Right.
basic shit.
Right.
And what's going to lead to that is there's going to be more, just out of pure necessity, unqualified people that are starting to fill these.
It's already happening.
It's already happening.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm not going to say it's getting filled with unqualified people, but the job's not being done well. There's so many misdiagnostics out there. From what I understand that I've heard about with Obamacare, I agree that everybody should have coverage, health care, find a way to make it work, right? But a lot of these doctors are, instead of giving quality care, they're trying to get quantity to hit their quota. So instead of meeting little Jimmy and Sally and saying, hey.
And this has to go with tie-ins to prescription drug
All
companies and
all
all
of it
that
comes
bullshit.
And this is
Those
what I
Suboxone
mean.
doctors, they're
Correct.
fucking, they're
It's so corrupt.
literally being pushed there, $300 for, like, they're in their pocket and all.
But this is again, corruption. It's all about.
At the heart of everything.
It's the heart of everything. It just is. You can't deny it. When you have, look, okay, so back to the quality quantity. So basically it was they got to have a certain amount of patients a day to do well in that business, to where before they could build that kind of personal relationship. And this is primary doctors I'm speaking about. They can give better care, really have the conversation to fully diagnose what's going on, instead of just, hey, what's going on here, bing, 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 and out. Prescription, oh, you're hurting, here's a pill, get out of here. You're thinking about this and that, okay, here's a pill, fix it.
Yeah.
Everything's pill.
Over-medicate.
Pill. Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? So,
Well, this goes to another point with healthcare that I guess kind of contradicts what I'm saying when we have the best healthcare here, is a bit of a lack of evolution with healthcare. And what I mean by that is being more on the forefront of treating things naturally and using food, our diet, nutrition,
that's a big part of it.
as, and not realizing that our whole system and all the food companies that the Monsanto Group, for example, who did they just recently acquire? I don't know if you know.
Monsanto? I don't know.
Anyway, but basically a lot of the root of our health issues is with our diet and nutrition and all the processed foods.
Even mental
and-
issues.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
But we don't, mental issues.
Think
exactly.
about it. Think about it. You're sad. You order a cheesesteak and French fries like we've all done. You don't feel better.
Look, the old
like,
saying.
it doesn't quench anything. You're more upset afterwards that
Sure.
you know.
But the old saying, you are what you eat.
Yeah.
Right? You're tired. I mean, you put bullshit in your body, you feel like shit.
Yeah.
I mean,
But instead, they prey on that with prescription drugs. You got Lipitor, you got all these other drugs.
So you think a single payer, Medicare for all, that kind of deal would that it would be on the rise? That like that it would get even worse. That kind of like quantity, just places popping up to just get more people in there, more people medicated.
Yeah, I'm just saying that was an argument against Obamacare. I mean that was some things that I've read and heard over the years. Tied in.
And then I would see, on the flip side of that, I would read articles where people were getting fantastic care in Canada.
Exactly.
People were going to Vancouver or Toronto, and it's gigantic. It's a gigantic thing. Like it's almost impossible to. In a presidential term, it's a long term kind of thing.
Agree.
So I think it's like something. I think we should all kind of be on the same idea that it's a good thing that everybody be insured, and then
I think most people are. I think most people want everyone to be able to have acceptable coverage. And this, to me, this isn't a left or right thing. It's figuring out a solution where we can make a population this large with such a diverse country, and how we can make it work so everybody gets not just any care, but quality care. And that's not a tricky thing. That's not we can't point fingers and say my side's right or this side's right. It has to be totally separate from politics. Obviously, politics are going to come into play.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about it. Because they're the ones who regulate everything. But in terms of structure, how we think we could really make this right, you're going to need some high-level intelligent people in various different fields to be able to.
You hit on something there. Where the high level intelligent people, where are they? I'll vote for them every time. Some of these buffoons that are there making decisions, it's where are our smartest?
Right.
Right now they're in Silicon Valley, and that's they're kind of driving the future. I think the future, as far as job service industry is going to be huge. As far as the Uber Eats type stuff, so anything to make people's lives better, service.
Where are the top doctors? Where are the top dietitians? Where are the top economists?
Yeah,
where are the top?
And can they come to my house? And
But hold on.
Can they come together and put all their heads together to make something?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
but
we need more smart people.
Who was the African American Republican that ran?
Ben Carson.
Ben Carson.
Yeah.
Wasn't he well known?
He was
highly profiled.
See with him though, it's funny how some people can be bright as can be in one area and then dense as can be in another. Medically, obviously he's
that's my point.
So yeah, you're right. So people aren't all. You're not all consuming.
Well,
everything.
That goes back to what I was saying.
Doesn't mean.
Well, that goes back to what I just said. Is where are all the top surgeons, dietitians, economists, people who are high level in healthcare coming together to kind of put together a solution for something like that.
I just
that would be too smart and too obvious.
Yeah,
right?
It goes back to the too many truths. If we can all agree on one truth, then we can get the smart doctors in. Instead of
the root of the problem is that doing something like that isn't gonna be as profitable as it would be for these big drug companies.
You have to understand too, right? Is that I understand that there may be a place for this, right? But America first, and I know that was awful. I shouldn't have said. I'm not trying to champion Trump here. I mean this as far as change goes, right? Focus on our country. I mean, how much do we give in foreign aid a year? I don't know what the number is, but I'm sure it's hundreds of millions, billions.
We are the most charitable country,
right?
And it might be
we have a responsibility to our allies, though, that we kind of. Those people go and fight. They fought in the Iraq War.
But an Iraq War that was started off of bullshit.
Right.
This is what I'm trying to say, that these bullshit wars, right, that we fight over bullshit lies,
right,
to fatten the pockets of bullshit politicians, right, bullshit corporations, right, while the little people suffer.
I know.
Right?
I think
it sounds dramatic, but it's true.
I think what you said, the rhetoric is and people get hung up on rhetoric. I get that, but America first, it's okay, the way I feel America and the world also, we're progressive. The world is flat now. We don't, to steal a line off Friedman, or I've read that book, and George W. Hill, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. It's called The World is Flat by Thomas Friedman. Awesome.
Okay.
Basically talks about how the world now, it's not like London is 12 hours away, right? Everything is a level playing field.
Sure.
As far as outsourcing, jobs to India and all that kind of stuff. But what I mean by that is I lost my track.
The
of
world
thought.
is flat.
Yeah, the world. Yeah,
Well,
basically, I think
America first.
Oh, you're America first.
Right.
Okay, America first. Like, so I agree, but you don't have to be so rah America. Like, how about this? Yeah, America. But also like let's keep our standing in the world.
Okay.
Because it's a big place, and
Right.
we do better when we're a part of the world.
Okay, but right. Okay, so America first was not a good phrase to use because it
But that is the phrase being used.
which is why I'm apologizing because I'm not trying to put this in a frame of Trump talk. I'm not. I'm talking about here we are having a conversation. How do we do better for our country, right? Healthcare for all. How do we make changes? How do we do this? How do we make it better? So that was about the last hour of our conversation, right? Well, how can we do that when we're propping up other countries? Our focus is on other countries, right? So we can't even get our own house in order, okay? But we can dump X amount of dollars. Yeah, of course we're going to have. Look, we have the most powerful military in the world, right? We have allies. If somebody's coming at our allies with force, let's back them up, right?
Right.
So you either want to fix what's going on in our country.
I'm not so sure they don't.
I'm not saying. But I'm talking about a solution here.
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So we're either going to focus in house and focus on getting everybody together in house and fixing what's going on in our country. And I'm not going to say or you don't. I'm not going to categorize it like that. But you can't have. Well, our country, we need Medicare for all, and we got to have these programs and free college and so on and so on, and then be funding billions of dollars to different countries. It's not feasible.
I think
right?
I get
Not
what you're
without us
saying.
getting paid, not without other people.
I think I get what you're
Right.
saying. So
You know what
we
I mean?
have our own very complex issues
Correct.
that we have to deal with
Right.
and make a priority.
Priority is a good word. Yes, perfect.
Make a priority
Right.
before we prioritize.
Is there a negative to stepping out of the world stage? I mean, I think we see it a little bit. I think there's a dynamic shift, and things like the UN and stuff.
Yeah, but what's the shift though, right? I mean,
The shift is our stance as a leader in the world.
but we are the leader in the world though.
But-
Who's saying that we're not?
I mean, China's
it's-
coming. They're all coming.
Because
It's
their
not-
economy is booming.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, right.
We can't even get that's what I'm trying to say. We have to focus on our country, right? Make us the world power.
What I'm saying is we can focus isn't it can be. It's not a lateral. It can be. You can focus on both. It doesn't
not financially, though, not without hurting Americans' pockets, is what I'm saying, right? That means you got to realize all them billions of dollars. This is what we're paying taxes. I know you, Booty, me. I don't want to pay 28%
Right.
of federal taxes a year. I don't.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do it for other countries. I
That
don't.
could be a whole nother
I don't.
conversation,
I just
but-
don't. I'm
Right.
sorry. I don't feel we need to fund the UN militarily, right? I don't feel we need to do that, right?
Right.
Now, if there's a I don't know, some kind of tragedy or Mother Nature devastates another country, sure, you want to give them foreign aid and help them out. But no, I don't feel that we need to prop up other economies. See, that's what happens, right? So you had these corporations in America propping up, giving work to these other economies. In return, we'll buy your products. And I understand it's capitalism and business.
A lot of times we're doing it for oil and stuff like that. Yeah.
Exactly, right? I mean, it's
Where's that money go? So if we're propping up these countries, where's this money that should help out our taxes, right?
to the top. It doesn't, though.
It
That's
does.
my
It
point.
goes
It
to the
works
top.
one way.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
everything we were talking about earlier. It's
That's
the
my
people at
point.
the top.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. They can spin it like, okay, America needs to help out this country, but no. And here's another thing too. Only X amount of that foreign aid only gets funneled down to the people who really need it.
Yeah.
Right? So take Haiti, for example, and I'm not going to make this a long, drawn-out conversation, but take Haiti. Haiti has a devastating earthquake, right? We give them hundreds of millions of dollars in aid to build it up, right? So not only did we not – so in Haiti, it happened in the southern part of Haiti, right? And we're going to build them up, build houses and roads and so on and so on. So all these billionaire contractors get the contracts, right, through pay-to-play type shit, right? And not only did they not build up the devastated part of Haiti, they built up the part that wasn't even affected.
For tourism or whatever. Yeah.
Actually, it was a Gap, a Target, and a Walmart went there. Tariff-free, right?
Yeah.
And cheap labor. So they made out like bandits on our tax dollars
Yeah.
that we gave them for foreign aid.
Right.
Right? So that's what's going on here. That's the level of corruption we're dealing with. And we can't even get proper health care to save people that are dying, like
Right.
you guys said.
Yeah.
That's the level of bullshit that we're dealing with. And we're too busy pointing fingers at each other on social media over bullshit. Right? And that's what gets me going. You know what I mean? It's cut the bullshit out. This is what's really going on. This is the level of corruption that we're dealing with.
These are the real roots of our problems.
No doubt about it. Just think about it. So when Beto and Bernie both announced they were running last week, what was the first thing that came up on every news station? Beto, he raises $5 million, and Bernie Sanders only raises this much. Right away. It's lobbying. It's raising money. It's what it's all about. These politicians, these Congress people, these lawmakers, 30 to 70% of the time, they're out campaigning.
Right. Yeah.
They're not coming to talk
It's
to you.
literally like college basketball coaches, like
Yes,
recruiting.
absolutely.
Like that's the job.
Absolutely.
Right, you know?
And they're not doing it for free. These corporations and these super PACs, they're doing it to benefit them when they need a bill or something to sway in their favor.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it might create jobs. I'm not saying that it won't in certain, situations, but the level, it never trickles down to the little people.
Yeah.
We're the little people, whether we're middle class, high middle class, it doesn't matter. We're all lumped into the peasants, right?
Right.
We ain't them.
Look, it sounds dramatic, but in reality, it's true. It's true. We get taxed, 28% federally, whatever amount, state, right?
Sales tax.
Sales tax. It's just boom, boom.
Property
boom.
tax.
Everything. It's just tax. And what are they doing? If people really knew
How much money that actually is.
Yeah.
and if people really knew the misuse
Yeah.
of federal government spending, there was actually a slush fund through taxpayer dollars to keep silent sexual accusers. There were sexual abuse accusers in our government. You don't see that on the news. Maybe a 5-minute clip.
Yeah.
Right? This is what I'm trying to say. Like everybody talks about, well, Fox does this, CNN does that, MSNBC covers this. They're not covering anything with any kind of substance. Some, yes, of course. But the level of corruption and what's really going on, you never see.
It's
never
at the
see
top,
light of
and
day.
that's kind of goes back to like my general feeling about government, society. Like, I think it's made the spin like the problems the poor people sometimes, and I feel the problems at the top.
See, and that's
And
this
with
is
trickle
where,
down economics and all that kind of stuff. Like about a year or two ago, I remember they released like $1,000 to everybody at work, and everyone's like, "See this?"
Right.
And then everyone's doing their taxes this year, and like people are like, "What?"
Got raped.
Got raped.
Yeah.
So the 1,000's gone. So
It's
what
right
really
back.
happened?
So
They
no,
gave a little
it's a mirage.
to keep people like
it's a facade. It's all
yeah, it's
it is.
like
Right.
feed the little mouse just so he's your buddy,
Keep
and then
him
you
quiet.
got him. So like the problem is there. It's here, and Republican and Democrat. It's not filtering down
Right.
like it should.
The problem is what we've all been saying, and we found so much common ground.
Sure.
Is that it's not Republican versus Democrat.
Shouldn't be, no.
It's the people at the top against everybody else.
No doubt.
And it's a shame, but to wrap this all up, and we've talked about something that could help change this, being open format conversations like a podcast. And I'll pose the question to you guys: what else can we do? I mean, we have to be able to do more, because the only thing that I can think of at the moment is literally, sounding crazy, but saying like something like a revolution, a revolt from the people against a tyrannical government, which is one of the reasons I think that people really feel strongly about the Second Amendment, and that sounds crazy too, is...
I buy that, though. I do. I know it sounds crazy. And
I buy it too, because I think, so first of all, you'll get people that'll say, well, you can't take on the government.
Exactly.
Well, the government...
It's not
and
musket and bat,
But
Right.
the U.S.
Well,
Army
they have us
consists...
outweighed.
The U.S. Army consists of the people.
It
And
won't
if
come
you
to
can-
that, though.
I know that, but if
You know
you
what I
can
mean?
get the people who are these soldiers, and I think the majority of them, have a lot of the same feelings
Right.
that we all do today, that and a great example of that is Pat Tillman. And just watch his documentary for anybody who hasn't watched it, and how his family feels actually about the government.
They say it was friendly fire, wasn't it?
It wasn't.
Right.
And how he's propped up to be some war hero, and his family's basically like, fuck you to the government.
Yeah,
like, you killed our son for your own propaganda,
Mm-hmm.
you sons of bitches. So basically that's what I'm getting at is I think a lot of why people feel that way is because what else can we do? That's the question. What else can we do besides have conversations like this to really make a change?
Just understand the level of corruption. and look, numbers talk. They do, right? So people have to really, really get rid of the bias and the tribalism and understand that, at the top, they're all on the same page. They might have disagreements, but they're there to make money, and they're there to make money. Both sides of the aisle, they're there to make money, right? They're lifelong politicians.
It's just a level of greed and corruption.
It's greed, corruption. Look, you have government officials who go to big corporations and get spots on the board. I mean, and then the contracts flow in. I mean, it's public knowledge, but the news doesn't cover this shit, right?
Of
so
course,
that's the problem, because they're for profit, right? Fox, CNN, they're not a nonprofit organization just distributing news. No, they're a corporation run by big, powerful billionaires, right? That want to make money. So they need ratings, they need advertisement. It's just money, money.
I think we should want to be informed.
Absolutely.
Like we shouldn't vilify and demean intelligence. We shouldn't make education out to, that's just some fancy liberal kind of thing. It's like we should have a quest as human beings to educate ourselves.
Sure.
And we shouldn't feel belittled by intelligence. If you're smarter than I shouldn't attack, that shouldn't make me feel like less of a man, so I got to somehow discredit what you say. We should all aspire to intelligence. And I think that
we should all learn from each other.
Learn from each other. We
Right.
should learn. We should want to know the truth. We should be informed. But I think as a country, it could get better if we didn't feel threatened.
Or I see the point that you're making, or you feel afraid to even voice your opinion because, to your point, maybe you don't feel that you're as knowledgeable in a particular
And that
category.
starts with the Trump thing. He's created a rhetoric where he attacks that kind of thought, with the tweets about it's quite cold today. All those global warming people must be idiots. It's antagonizing. It's counterproductive. And it belittles scientists, which are best and brightest. We should really not believe every word they say, do our own research, but we should aspire to that. We should aspire to our greater selves, to learning.
Because that all comes down to facts and data. And in opening ourselves up to the true facts and the true data is the key to all this. So to your point, yes, don't belittle the people who have this knowledge, who aren't in some way affected by lobbyists or people of that nature. But, that was to my understanding of...
That's also involved there, Boot, you know what I mean?
I know that.
I know
that. And that's where I go down two different rabbit holes and I have to decipher and do critical thinking, to your point. But that's where I was able, on a topic like global warming, to kind of come to my own opinion about that.
So if the world, and I'm not saying this real fast. I know we're trying to wrap this up, but I'm not saying this in defense if there's global warming or not. But right, global warming is a serious problem, right? Could potentially be.
Absolutely.
So why wouldn't believers of global warming, of whatever news station, whoever has that big of a platform, why not dedicate an hour show on that with the scientists and data? And
well, I think there's been documentaries.
Al Gore,
there's been documentaries
and
on that.
Yeah,
documentaries. I'm just saying mainstream.
Al Gore basically.
Well, because I
concentrated
think the mainstream, it goes back to a lot of the root we're talking about. The mainstream agenda is just to flood us all with bullshit from either side. Whatever is the sexiest topic.
Sure.
Global warming might not be as sexy on either side.
Yeah, it's also not right now.
Exactly.
But that's
right
my,
now.
When it
that's
dies
my
down.
point.
Yeah.
And but all I'm saying is that's my
It'll
point.
always be pushed off if it's not right now. You know what I mean? So
Because
that's right.
we've always seen that things that could be the most important are oftentimes not what's reported on.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Right, and that's
No,
what I'm trying to say. The serious matters that should be reported on, and it's not.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Because it goes back, we keep going in circles, but it's all about us not getting the facts and information on what really is
Right.
important to.
And you know what the sad part about it is people don't even give a shit about that.
No.
People would rather hear about some kind of elaborate conspiracy.
I feel like that is
whatever,
because
you know
it's
what I
almost
mean?
so deep. Like we're so deep into the fist fight back and forth.
And it also makes a segment of the population feel inferior when you're told you're not, some scientist or somebody's telling you that you're not smart. It makes people feel inferior to.
But I don't even think scientists put it that way.
I
think
they don't have
most
to put it
people,
that way. Just
I don't know, scientists don't, but I think there is a segment of the population that talking about
An
it,
inferiority
they're-
complex?
Yeah, inferiority complex. Right away, it's like, okay, yeah. It's like, why be like that? Why
Right.
would your
You
first
should wanna
instinct?
learn.
Why would your first,
Right.
whether it's there's holes in it, the idea or the holes in the belief or whatever. It's not a belief; it's scientific fact. Whether there's holes in it or not, why would your first instinct be like, well, that's bullshit? Like either way, like why are we?
I think
on
it's
that?
because to what I just said, we're so far in the fist fight that we have the tribalism that is because you want to support your side. It's like people are scared to learn the
Oh, many a drunk uncle you will
No, that's all right. So
That's good topic. I could talk about this for hours.
keep it changing. The street does not dictate our day.
But I think what we found is that we had so much common ground, and
I knew
and I
that.
think a
I
lot
knew
of
that.
people would find that having
Sure.
these conversations.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, social media and all that shit, you disconnect from there and have
Like-
dialogue like this.
Like you
it'll
said
solve
earlier,
so much-
the whole 140 characters, like that limits the conversation.
Right.
It dumbs it down
right.
to like.
I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
You
It's
just have to be
probably
straight
it's
to the
probably
point.
one
Yeah.
of the worst forms of communication that you can have.
And it's not meant-
because
but it's not
number
meant
one,
for
it's
this.
it's text. You can't really interpret that. There's no body language.
No
there's
emotions,
no tone.
no nothing. Right.
You
Can't
only
read it.
have 140 characters, and a lot of times you're responding to. There's already this cycle of people being triggered by emotion because that's what we're really going on. It's very rarely, people being open-minded and having an open discussion because the platform doesn't allow for that.
Right. And I would say with the platform, like, who's triggering this emotion? Not to like get a shot in on Trump or anything but it's got to start somewhere. And like
Right.
but
But we're all adults here.
Well,
so-
I don't think the solution
we're adults,
is
but we're not all some people really aren't. They don't act like it. So they
Right.
get triggered the worst. Us three maybe not. We can decipher through like just go about your day. Don't be so triggered by that. But then something could really. So I mean, it's just something. Adults in the room. It should start with better people.
Sure. Look, two wrongs don't make a right.
Yeah.
Look
Just
at it that
inform
way.
yourself too, like we've talked about. Do what you can, understand their perspective, and do your research to your opposing view.
Yeah,
for whatever
Very
it is.
important. Yeah, you can't. Yeah, the opposing view. That's you asked the question earlier. What can make it better? That's it.
Absolutely.
You have to do it without bias, though. You just have to.
Absolutely.
If you're not going in open-minded, you're just wasting your time. I mean, it's the truth. You know what I mean? But I mean, look, man, it'd be nice to just get some honest journalism, which is out there. It is. You know what I mean? And
I wish I had the site because there is that. I'm sure you guys have seen the graph of all the news things and which ones are rating them. They're the ones you should go for the middle. They got Fox on the right.
I know what graph you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
it's
if one
pretty
of
cool.
you
Al
guys,
Jazeera is pretty good, like that one. Like I
Yeah.
know it scares a lot of people, the name, but it's actually a news kind of site. Whatever it was, maybe that's not the best one, but there are ways to look, and there's
well, we can always look at it too, and then share it on social media
Yes,
so
for
people
sure.
can see.
Sure.
This has been awesome. I really think we can do this more often. I think we can dig into a wide range of topics and maybe even hit them individually to give them, more specific focus. This is pretty much exactly how I thought and wanted the conversation to go. So before we wrap things up, either you guys have any final thoughts, anything you want to say, any social media you want to promote, anything like that?
No.
No,
not social media.
unfollow me, please.
Yeah, right.
I lose friends by the week.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Great conversation.
Great
though.
conversation. Just it's good to talk like this and not like that.
So thanks everybody for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. I loved the shit out of this conversation. And like I said, my plan is to have more. Give us feedback or give me feedback on social media and let me know if there's any topic in particular that you may want to talk about or if we should do, a few topics or specifically focus on one. Happy to do that. But the social media is Storytime with Boots. That's both Facebook and Instagram. and Storytime W Boots on Twitter. All right, party people, we're out of here.